noting that it's 7:02 p.m. on January 22nd, 2025. I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. And the first thing we'll do, since this is a virtual meeting, is board members will announce their presence. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Steve Constantine present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
Okay, and then when Rebecca joins, we'll try to remember to have her also announce her presence. All right, so we have 2 variance hearings and then a number of other projects to review. But there are a couple of items that have come up that were not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And I'd like to note what they are, and then we can vote whether to amend the agenda. So we received just very recently 2 food permit applications for 2025, one for St. Teresa's Parish and the other for the the Unitarian Universalist Church. The applications are in. They have the fees waived because of their status as organizations, religious organizations, and the food inspector has had the opportunity to review the materials and finds everything in good order. Those are the things before us, and if we can take care of that tonight, they will have their 2025 food permits in effect. So would anyone like to make a motion to add these to the agenda?
I move that we add the 2025 food permits for St. Teresa's Parish and the Unitarian Universalist Church.
And I second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Daryl, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, Daryl, for 11 Ames, it says septic tank relocation plan. We did receive today a building proposal. And so if I could ask for the board to include that with the review we do for the septic tank relocation.
Okay. So
and it was added to today.
Yes, it was added to the documents. I didn't. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. So do we have a motion to amend the agenda to also include a review of new floor plans for 11 Ames Drive?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So the food inspector is not attending tonight because he had already provided his input. That means I think we can take some agent's business if you've noted people who are here, and I have to confess, I think Keaton was here first, but I'm not positive.
And I'm not for sure either, but it was either Keaton was here or Elizabeth. I don't know who was here first.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth joined later. Pretty sure. Keaton, does that and Elizabeth, does that make sense to you? I know. I think it was Keaton and Tony who were here early.
Yeah, that works for us. Whatever.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that would mean 15 Everett Street.
Okay.
What we're going to talk about.
And we do have floor plans, and Keaton and I were discussing the floor plans as of up to today, and there they are there, Daryl. And you will, Keaton, did you highlight that? I know it was highlighted. We talked about the floor plans of the current plan shown there, and it shows the house and how the house is set up with like almost a breezeway between the house and the garage with the pictures. And then this first plan shows the current floor plan. And I don't know, I had on mine that it had, I think it was an error. There was a little note below right where it, maybe right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just me and my poor
That's okay.
PowerPoint skills. Trying to
there's no
pull it out,
awful-
but yeah, that should have been deleted. Yeah, that
Okay,
was
thank
for
you.
then
That would,
I was making
Okay.
slides.
that's fine, because I know
All
you're
right, so,
planning, so we can start.
Yeah. So if
All
I guess
right,
if you go to
so-
first, the top one,
The current floor plan, yeah.
or just like the picture of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have, yeah, that left where the garage doors are, like that, I guess that part of the building is what we're discussing today is finishing space in there, because I guess when we first moved here, from the city, from our 500 square foot condo 5 years ago, that, it was enough space, but now 5 years later with 3 kids and another one, we're all out of space. So just trying to finish that up.
Thank you. And if the
Okay.
board so wishes, we can go through each set of plans.
Mhm.
We have the current floor plan showing 3 rooms on the first floor, the kitchen, the dining room, and the master bedroom. And I did have a question, Keaton. Did they not have a living room in that house?
So we like combined, there was only a small bedroom because we did construction. We submitted,
Mhm.
was that 22? So a couple years back.
It was either 21 or 22.
Yeah, but we combined like a bedroom plus like the other room to create that master bedroom,
Okay, thank
the
you.
master suite.
Well, that helps to answer that question. And then on the second floor above the existing house are the 3 bedrooms. And so the house presently, before renovating, would have 1, 2, 3 on the first and 3 on the second, 4 bedrooms total, and a total of 6 rooms. So 6 rooms and a total of 4 bedrooms. And then
Do we know
proposed,
what the septic system is right now, Mark?
yes, it has a it has a certificate of compliance. I do need to get back in there. It happened all during COVID. And Keaton, you didn't own the house during COVID, correct?
So we moved in, I guess, July.
July
June
2020.
2020. So it was during the middle of COVID. So it was still
Okay,
like
so-
lockdown time.
Yeah, the certificate was issued to a Gordon Ruggeber, and that was back in 2020 on April 16th. And I still need to get in the house, and we can arrange that. That's not going to curtail tonight's review, but it is it was a 4-bedroom replacement septic system that was put in.
In 2019, they installed
And
that.
that's when the permit was issued,
Yep.
2019, and they finalized a conditional certificate, and we finalized a conditional certificate on April 16th of 2020. We just hadn't got in the house, and I think you and I spoke about that, just to look at the interior. So that can easily be arranged, not an issue. And, but the proposal, and so again, it's a 4-bedroom septic design. Sorry if you hear that noise. My Microsoft account's goofing up somehow. This is the new floor plan. They're showing the kitchen where the dining room was. They're going to make that the breakfast nook, part of the kitchen, and put a pantry there as well. So the first floor will go down to the kitchen and the master bedroom of the existing house, not the garage area, but the existing house area. And the second floor doesn't change. And correct me if I misstate anything, Keaton, or whoever you're with as well. But that's the way I see it right now. It's a reduction of 1 room for the present house that's there. So they
Yeah, so
go,
I guess like the kitchen breakfast nook area is like where it says like kitchen pantry, like our existing dining room is going to be where that kitchen pantry is.
yeah,
So
and
we-
so that's a room reduction, because what
Yeah.
you're doing is you created now a reduction in rooms, which isn't a bad thing because of what you're proposing. So I see the new floor plan for the first floor, minus that little note on the bottom as 2 rooms. And then I see the second floor staying the same with the 3 bedrooms.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. And then this is the existing garage. And they want to put, and there's the kitchen, and you go through the kitchen to get to it. And they want to put in a living room and an office to the right of that garage. And the stairway that goes in the middle will be a mudroom there as well, but that doesn't count as a room. And they're proposing 2 rooms on the second floor. And when I met with Keaton about maybe a month ago now, I explained the 2 rooms over this new living area would need to be reviewed, because in our definition of bedrooms, we say any room over the first floor are considered bedrooms, which would cause for the bedroom count to go up to 6, unless the board sees it differently. But presently, the 3 bedrooms on the second floor and the 2 rooms on the first floor would be 5. The new office would be 6. The proposed living room and office would bring it to 7. And then the 2 rooms above would bring it to 9 rooms. So you can have 9 rooms on a 4-bedroom septic system. But as I told Keaton, the concern would be the definition we have in the Board of Health codes that says any room over a first floor are considered bedrooms. And that's why I brought it to the board tonight for discussion.
Mhm. And I think what we're seeing here that's different, when we've done that, considered allowing them to be regarded not as bedrooms. They were over really all garage space. So it wasn't just a quick trip downstairs through finished space, regular living space, to a bathroom. So this one gets a little confusing because it looks almost like a cape home by itself.
Yes.
These 2 floors taken together. So our challenge is that we have to look at the structure and not how you're going to use the space. So if it looks like a bedroom on a second floor, then even if you're planning the rec room and the gym, how you're going to use it is not necessarily how we have to evaluate it. So this one's in a gray area. I don't think I've seen this before, exact kind of setting. So some of the things we consider are whether there's privacy in the rooms on the second floor. And for example, if there was just a banister around the staircase or something like that, and the rest was open, then it wouldn't have any privacy that we normally associate with the bedroom. And then we may be able to treat it differently. I don't know, do other board members have any comments you'd like to share about this?
I have clarifying questions. So in the new proposal within the existing barn, I see a bathroom opposite the office. Is that proposed to be a half bath, a 3/4 bath, a full bath?
It was, as of right now, we were doing, I guess, 3/4. We're gonna put a shower in there.
Okay. Okay. And then just so I understand the existing conditions in the barn, I recognize that on the second floor of the barn, there is an already finished space on half of that second floor. Is that right?
Yep, so the previous owners had, since it's like they're massive rooms, so it's like they had like a band room. I think the previous owner, like their son was in a band, so that was like their band practice room. So they're pretty big spaces.
And how is that
Yeah, they're
room?
like lofted ceilings, so they're pretty massive.
Yeah. How is that room currently accessed?
So there's stairs up to the top part of the barn right now. So that right now there's it's not finished, but there's already like, well, I guess that room there's no heat in it, but there's flooring and it has insulation in it. On the other side, it's just raw.
And the stairs are open
The
to the
stair,
garage.
yeah, the stairs are open in the garage.
So I'm trying to paint a picture. This is the kind of thing where when we have pictures, it tends to be easier. So currently you go from the unfinished garage up a stairwell
Yep, in the unfinished
To-
garage. Yep,
to the second floor that has that finished space.
correct,
And that is the only way to access that space.
correct.
Okay. And so I think the challenge here is, yes, partially in finishing and making, if those are 2 rooms in the barn that create privacy and have, well, it might not be your use for bedroom, it would meet our bedroom definition, given they're on the second floor and offer privacy. In addition, the fact that they will be now accessed differently. Instead of being accessed through an unfinished space, it's going to be accessed through a finished space as part of the challenge here. Which is why that room now being accessed over the garage only through the unfinished space would not qualify it as a bedroom under our definition. So that's just I know that this is probably very circuitous for you guys, but just to explain these little details that we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, if we needed to do like no doors, like banister, yeah, we just need space. So whatever is needed to be done so that we can have a little bit more living space, so we're not stepping on Paw Patrol and Barbies in our kitchen. We're game.
I have been there myself. I understand very well what you're going through. Don't worry. And so currently when you go up on the barn to the second floor, is there a door that brings you into that currently finished space?
There's a door to that
At the
finished.
top of the stairs?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Is it as it's shown over here? Somewhat?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, that gets trickier. I'm sorry, Diana has her hand up. I didn't mean to
Well,
dominate.
No, I was wondering some of the same things, Julie. So when you go up to up the stairs to the second floor, is there a door at the top of the stairs? I don't see anything indicated here. Or is it just like a landing?
There's like a little landing, and then there's a door to the right, as
Okay.
seen in this photo, to go into that area.
So there's just one door to the right area. It looks like there's a door to the closet, but no door on
There's
the
no
left-hand
closet.
side.
Yeah, so the closet hasn't been built yet.
Okay.
So it's just right now it's just that door that's upstairs.
Okay,
to go
well,
to
I
that.
wouldn't consider the closet a room because a bedroom is so tiny. But so there's just the room, a door on the right-hand side, nothing to the left-hand side.
It's just like bare wood,
Okay.
unfinished space. Yeah.
And did you
Okay.
say that there is
Uh,
HVAC in that space? And at the top of the stairs in the barn, when you go to the right, is that conditioned with some type of HVAC?
No, it's just there's like a little space heater in there. That can like I have I have a golf sim set in there right now, so it helps a little bit. But right now it's like this time of year, it's pretty useless.
Yeah.
But you would prefer to have it heated, I assume?
If
More
for that to
usable?
be air
Yeah.
conditioned space, yeah.
Okay. So I was going to back up just a little bit too to explain that the reason this becomes a big deal for number of bedrooms is the number of bedrooms is how you determine the appropriate septic system sizing per state regulations. So that's why we're trying to figure out if they can just be rooms, you meet the requirements of the septic system size. But if one or both have to be counted as a bedroom, then that's in conflict with the septic sizing. So that's what we're trying to figure out. In a way, the way this is right now, on the left side, you come up the stairs and it's open. We have seen other instances where that is regarded as a loft. It's a little tricky when it's this large, but that is something that we can discuss as a board. The other was how open this would need to be considered sort of one giant room that doesn't offer. And if you never put a door going up here that would close this off and turn it into a bedroom, that might be an option. I don't know what other board members think. I haven't thought of what any pitfalls of that might be. But
Yeah, and we can get rid of the closet if the closet's causing any concern.
And I don't think we're gonna
no,
door at the top of the stairs.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
no,
can.
you could have closets that we don't use that as a determinant of a bedroom, really. Mark, I don't think that we've ever used the
No,
closet
closet,
is
not, That is,
Yeah.
oops, that is correct, Darrell.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that, Daryl. You guys can definitely have a closet there. That's not an issue.
Could have several
So-
closets.
So, but you are thinking to, for the second floor barn, you're thinking to both finish the currently unfinished space and to condition, and by that I mean air conditioning and heat, both the entire second floor. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because I guess, I mean, partially if, maybe that space has, I don't know what the status of the floor is and what's considered existing space. If you just have a little space heater that you carry up there and there's nothing built in to that space, then I'm not sure that that counts as conditioned, especially if it's, not particularly insulated or there's no weatherization happening there. In which
Right now, it's
case,
currently insulated.
okay. And the space heater that's there, I mean, is this properly built into the space or?
No,
Is
it's like it's an unfinished room. Like I can take, I guess in the summertime I can take like work calls and stuff because we both work from home too. So that's like part of it because we have to like work on our kitchen table or in one of the kids' bedrooms. But so I can go up there and take calls and stuff in the summertime. But when it gets cold out, it's kind of useless up there unless I'm in a winter coat on a Zoom call like this.
I understand
I-
very well.
I don't want to push you into being too hot or too cold.
No.
Or using something that's not energy efficient or even potentially, not as fireproof the system. So,
I got a question.
Mark, in terms of what we've done elsewhere with opening up spaces to make them not private, I can think of something. I think it was South Main in the last year, where the
believe
third
so.
floor, had a similar walk up an open staircase into just a very large landing with, I think, a room tucked off to the side somewhere that did have a door and we deemed a bedroom, but it had and I don't know what the exact dimensions of this are, but can you think of any other examples like that where we've had something similar if it was open?
I'm trying to remember too, and nothing's coming to mind right now, but I know that there's an opportunity, I believe I think it was East Goulding, Goulding West rather. Yes, Goulding West, we looked at something there, I believe, or we were looking at having open rooms, but that was more in the basement, if I remember right, but that concept of
Yeah.
an open area has been discussed.
Steve, you had a question. We interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I should be raising my hand. Maybe it's the scale, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of the second floor of the barn. Is it the second floor, is the two rooms going to be a partial? I'm not saying it right, but is it like a loft area in one part of the barn and then the other part of the barn to the right is where the new room's going to be?
So it's both. Yeah, if you go up the stairs, like it's all like over our cars right now. Like there's floor right now.
Okay, so there's flooring across the entire top of the barn.
Yep.
And that's where the new area is going to be. There's not going to be an open space like any kind of a loft.
Yeah, I mean we can if needed we can do whatever's needed. But yeah, right now there's not really, it's not finished right now. There's floor right now, but it's just
I guess like that wall is like loft, right? Like
Yeah.
like loft meaning like you could look down and see the
like the car.
stairs.
Yeah,
Right,
like
you can see, look down and see the
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
Yep.
So like that would be, I guess, loft.
Yep.
To the left.
Correct.
Okay,
So it's
so
not
this
like that,
would
though,
be
it's-
just a half wall or something?
Yep.
And if you did that on the other side as well, does that then defeat the purpose of being able to use it as an office?
I mean, it wouldn't be ideal, but if that's the only way we can do it,
I would think heating it would be difficult.
If I can, was there any consideration to go past the foundation footprint and add these 2 additional rooms behind the garage or to the side of the garage?
Since we have like wetlands behind our, because this is like where Laurel Fields is. If you look right across from Laurel Fields, there's like a little pond, and this is like if you go up that hill, like this on the top of it, so that those are like the wetlands, like
Oh,
right by there.
cool.
So we don't want to. I don't think that we can, go outside this footprint.
Okay, thank you.
I had a second
Is-
question too, from the pictures on the first page. I thought there was a breezeway between the house and the barn, or maybe it's just the way it looked. But you're saying that's kitchen
Yep.
connecting to the barn, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And Mark, you were talking about a certificate of compliance. So was the septic relatively new,
Yes,
newly
it was,
replaced?
it was put in and it was replaced in 2019 through 2020, 2020, and it is for a 4-bedroom replacement septic system, which
Okay,
would meet the 9 rooms that they're proposing. It's just the bedroom count is the
right.
potential issue here with those rooms over the new areas below, which is not just over a garage, it's over a new finished living room, and I forget what the other one is. It might be an office. It'll show it.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
what this is
okay.
typical, where we've seen breezeways or entryways that go over a garage, and the board's seen one room over a garage and not considered it part of the bedroom count because one, it wasn't attached to the rest of the second floor. In this case, it's not either. But the issue would be that because they want to finish the base of the garage to the right side, you now would have 2 additional rooms over finished space, not just over a garage.
Mhm.
And
So
that's,
right now, the only thing I'm coming up with is that, let me just get back to the
yeah,
appropriate plan, that it would be pretty much,
and below these rooms is the office and the
yeah,
living room. Proposed, I should say
Okay.
proposed.
my system is just hung up on refreshing this page for some reason. Come on. There we go. Okay. Is, half walls on either side and then quite open? Or I don't know if there's any option, given that it's a new and new system, Title V, since the current Title V criteria, whether there's any option to add on a little bit, and then you really could have, if you were able to add on and wanted that expense, you could have a room, and depending on how much you could add on, possibly 2.
But I believe, Daryl, I don't have the septic plan. They needed waivers when they got this plan approved.
Okay.
From
Oh,
3 to
okay.
4, I believe. So I can check all that. If it's an additional
Yeah.
2 bedrooms that with waivers, then that wouldn't be allowed. I can go
Mhm.
back to the old septic plan to see if it was a 3-bedroom to 4, or if it was a 4-bedroom just being replaced with waivers.
Mm.
But that's a possibility, especially, maybe
Okay.
Keaton, you might know, do you know offhand if that master bedroom was there when you moved in? Was it always there before you renovated it?
There was a bedroom there, so it was always a 4-bedroom, but
So it was a
we just
4-bedroom.
added like that bathroom and closet to that bedroom.
So what Daryl's saying is there's a possibility you could go from a 4 to a 5-bedroom septic system if it was indeed always 4 bedrooms. And that would mean adding on to the present leaching field. And because it's a 5-bedroom, if that's what the goal is, the septic tank would have to be increased in size from 1,500 to 2,000.
Okay, so that
It's a
starts
possibility.
getting up there in expense.
Yeah.
Or maybe going back to the first floor. I mean, and we have a hearing that we're now 2 minutes late for, so we might have to take a break from this. But I see there is an office here, and maybe you each need an office, but I don't know if there's anything that rearranging what happens on what floor would make it any simpler. I'm not sure that that does.
Yeah, because they meet the room count. It's just the fact these are over the
Right,
first floor.
right. And I understand why you're doing it for the layout and the usage. It's just how we merge that with our requirements. So if it's okay with you, we're going to jump to our scheduled hearing, which we need to open and take care of. Think about some of those options and what we've talked about. We'll come back to this in a little bit. All right. So, okay, noting that it is 7:33, we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 2 Surrey Lane. And I see that, Dan, you're here. I can open up the plans. And you can explain the reason that the variance is being requested.
That's sheet 2 of 2. Can you open up sheet 1 of 2?
That's funny. It says page 1, so I think the numbers might have been reversed. I can get to that in just a moment.
Okay, if you don't have it, I can share my screen. I probably have it.
Let's see if the page 2 works better. It's page 1. Okay.
That's it. So for the record, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners, 2 Surrey Lane. They are in a process of preparing the home for sale. Had a Title V inspection, which failed the inspection process, and we retained to design a new septic system. So this lot was constructed in 1967. It's kind of a corner lot on Ivy Lane and Surrey Lane. The driveway is actually off of Ivy. The existing well is in the front yard, as you can see there. The existing system is in the backyard, pretty much obscured by the new system. We tested in a number of areas around the existing system to try to determine, suitable soils and groundwater, because the only place to put this system really, because of the well location and the topography, is right back in the same location. The testing we did around the system was kind of mediocre at best. We found lots of areas of fill, some shallow groundwater. So we ultimately decided to do a test pit directly through the existing system, just to convince ourselves there was enough soil there to build a new septic system in that location. And there was. We got down pretty deep beneath the existing system, so we're confident that we have enough soils there. What we're proposing to do is replace the septic tank in pretty much the exact location as the existing tank, and put in an Elgin bed system. The groundwater issue is not really an issue at this site. It was down deep enough, and the plumbing under the in the basement allowed us to have a gravity septic system. But that's going to require kind of a waiver that we need to request from the Board of Health to use an Elgin bed system. we did one percolation test outside the area. We couldn't really do a percolation test in the exact area of the system because the existing system was there. So we're asking for a waiver on the percolation test, and we use a sample of the soil underneath the existing system to do a sieve test and come up with a percolation through the laboratory protocol that DEP allows for where we can't do perk tests. So that results in a pretty conservative percolation rate. It actually ends up being 30 minutes per inch in these soils. The one test we were able to do was actually 2 minutes per inch. And we went back and looked at the 1967 design, and that was based on 2 percolations then, which were 3 minutes per inch and 15 minutes per inch. So we feel that the design is conservative with respect to size. Now, normally we use Elgins when we're looking for a reduction to groundwater. We're not asking for that here. We're meeting the 5-foot groundwater offset, but the Elgins are helpful in reducing the size of the system to fit in the area we have. So based on a 30-minute percolation rate, it's a pretty big system which wouldn't fit here. But using the Elgins under the DEP remedial use approval, we can reduce that size by up to 40% to fit in here. And we still end up with a pretty large system. So the waivers that we're looking for under Title V, we're looking for a local upgrade waiver to use a sieve test analysis rather than a percolation rate. And under the Sherborn regulations, 5.1D, we're asking for that same variance where you're required to have 2 percolation tests. We only have 1 and a sieve test. We're asking for that variance. Another variance is maximum cover over the leach field is limited to 24 inches in Sherborn. Due to the sloping nature of this yard, we have less than that on a portion of it. We have about 17 inches over one side, and we have 28 inches over one corner of it, which we couldn't really reduce. It doesn't sound like much, 4 inches, but we really couldn't reduce the cover much more in that area. So we're asking for that waiver on cover. The system is vented, so that helps. And the final variance we're asking for Sherborn is, beds are prohibited in Sherborn except for alternative technologies that use pressure dosing. In this case, we can keep it a gravity system and avoid all the pumpings if we use if we use these Elgins as a bed arrangement under a gravity situation. So we're asking for that waiver to use a bed with an alternative technology without pressure dosing. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about Elgin systems. Daryl, there's a detail of the Elgin systems in the kind of the upper right-hand corner. If you could move over to that one and then go up. So that's a cross section of the Elgin bed system. So it's different than a conventional stone and pipe bed, where the biomat develops along the entire bottom and restricts airflow up through the system. The Elgin bed system is more like a trench system that has narrow separation, where we have columns of sand in between the Elgin units where the biomat develops. So we do have that airflow in the bed system, unlike a conventional system. So we think it provides an equivalent level of environmental protection if you were granted that waiver for use of an Elgin bed in this situation. So I think with that, I can turn it over for questions. It is a 4-bedroom system now based on the 1967 disposal works construction permit, and it's staying a 4-bedroom system. I'm not asking for any increase in bedroom count. So with that, I think I turn over for questions.
So I do have one question just to ask you to comment on the fact that Elgin would permit you to go to within 2 feet and you're still providing, there's still 5 feet to groundwater. Does that way also influence your thinking about the gravity system? There's no loss of effectiveness of the system, combining those issues. That makes sense?
Sorta.
Yeah, I know, not completely, but it seems like we're normally looking at maybe pressure dosing and 2 feet of soils beneath, but this is having more soils.
Well, we've based on the test pit, we've determined that we have a suitable depth of soil and that the groundwater is not an issue.
Mhm.
So we don't really need to deal with that issue. We really need to deal with the space constraints. And the Elgin system and many alternative systems are approved under the remedial use approval to be smaller than a conventional size system. So that's why we selected this particular system. But it does, in effect, treat the effluent better than a sonnet pipe system based on what DEP is telling us.
Okay, I think it's right. You haven't made trade-offs, you just happen to have the conditions here, I guess. So it's a little different than a trade-off. Happen to have the conditions of ample soil before groundwater. So
Yeah, it's just a little bit different than
I'm inclined to think
see.
that foregoing the advantages of pressure dosing to make it a system that would be robust during power outages has an advantage. Less complicated, less to maintain.
I think that's the whole point behind this. If we can avoid that pump system, it avoids a lot of hassles for the homeowner.
Mm-hmm. Kind of more resilient too.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I've got one. Dan, at the bottom left of the slide we're looking at, there was something about a stone something that was saturated. There's a note there. If you keep going. Keep going. There it is. Existing stone system remove as needed, saturated. But what does that mean? Is that a
That means the system was in failure. It was saturated with effluent. It wasn't leaching into the soil anymore.
so it was a cesspool?
No,
No,
it was a stone and pipe system. And when we were testing for it, we hit it. And the stone was saturated right up to the pea stone. So everything was saturated in there.
So
I
by
can add.
going, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Steve, I can add a little bit more. If you look at Dan's plan, you'll see the system, proposed system in red. Dotted black lines go through that system where he has the arrow pointing to it. And
Yeah.
that's the approximate area of the existing system. It's
Right.
see unless you really, as you're pointing it out now, Daryl.
Right. So I guess my real question is, if you're putting the Elgin system on top of this, is that going to cause a problem? Do you have to go deeper, or how does that get handled?
We take out the existing system completely and replace it with Title V sand.
Okay. Okay. Just like you would with any system, with an
Yes.
Elgin system. So it's,
Yes.
even though it's saturated at this point, you don't have to go deeper. You don't have to do anything special.
Well, we would, the contractor would want to pump that out as they're excavating it out, so they don't create a complete mess. So we put a note on there that it's saturated just to give the contractors a heads up that they're probably gonna need a pump truck on the day that they're excavating out the bottom.
To pump out the existing field, not just the tanks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dan, your explanation for the use of the Elgin is extremely helpful, because as I was reviewing this, I was taking guesses as to why you're using the Elgin, and it was like, they've got plenty of distance to groundwater. I don't understand. So that was excellent. Just and in terms of the cover having to exceed the 24 inches, it looks sometimes you have put, I know these are beds, but put them in a stepped format. And I see that's not happening here. And so this is more just an informative question. Is that not an option in this site or not an option with this particular Elgin system?
We can put Elgins on an Elgin bed on kind of a stepped configuration. But it wouldn't help us here because we're controlled by the elevation of the pipe coming out of the house.
Ah,
That's
okay.
what's dictating the depth of the system.
Got it, for the gravity fed. Got it. Thank you. That is helpful to understand why it's designed that way. I didn't have additional questions.
Okay, and Mark, do you have any particular comments to add?
Yes, I do. I can say that through all the years of working on replacement septic systems, this was one of the most difficult sites I've seen, and I believe Dan, the engineer, has worked this out the best possible, in my view.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we go to the variances?
We should see if there's any abutters.
Yes.
I don't think we have a small crowd tonight.
Is there anyone else who has any questions or comments before we move on to the variances? Although while we're doing these, you can also interject or raise your hand. Okay. Bigger. Right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 1.2 regarding the leaching beds without pressure dosing?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 5.1D regarding the perk tests and a sieve test was used?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.03 regarding the maximum cover over the system?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And lastly, we have the Title V local upgrade waiver 15.4051I, also related to the use of the sieve test.
So moved. Sorry.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Okay, so I'll close the hearing and mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to two deed recordings, one for the use of the innovative alternative technology, that being the Elgins, and the other deed recording is for the prohibition for the use of a garbage grinder.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans conditional to receipt of those two deed recordings?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
And Darrell Beardsley, aye. Okay, thank you, Dan, and
You.
Surprise, let's see, it is now 7:51, and I'll open the variance hearing for 9 Russet Hill Road and a septic replacement. And open up the plan.
Right. So again, for the record, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners. They are also in the process of preparing the house for sale sometime later this year. They were proactive in getting a Title V done, and it did not pass inspection, so we retained to design a new one. Russet Hill Road is down at the bottom of the page. You can see the well right behind the house and the existing septic tank and leach field are in the front of the house on that slope. So this was constructed back in the 1970s when well radiuses were only 100 feet. So you can see the existing system just meets that 100-foot radius for the existing well. We decided to test kind of lower down the lot to try to see if we could improve that well offset increase. And we found, much better soils than we found at 2 Surrey Lane, that's for sure. So we were able to design a new system here. It's going to be a conventional stone and pipe system. Because of the topography of the yard, we can also keep this one a gravity system. We did have groundwater at about 4.5 feet in that range. And we designed it as a Title V compliant system with a 4-foot groundwater offset in order to minimize the mounding. You can see we've got a 3-to-1 slope down by Russet Hill Road. If we were to increase the mounding much more, we would have had a steeper slope, or we would have had to disturb a nice stone wall that runs right along Russet Hill Road. And we really didn't want to do that. So we're designed as a Title V system with a 4-foot groundwater offset. We couldn't meet the full 150-foot well offset of the existing well because it's a, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, it's a 125-foot offset. The well is up gradient, system's down gradient, so we got 125-foot offset. We're at about 119, which is about a 19-foot improvement over the existing system. We located the abutters wells, and we're meeting the offsets on those. The closest one would be 15 Russet Hill Road right next door. That well is slightly down gradient, so we've got 150-foot groundwater offset on that one. Actually, slightly more than 150. It's 150 to the over excavation, probably about 155 to the leach field itself. And the tank is going to go in about where the existing tank is to connect to the existing plumbing. And I think it's a pretty straightforward septic system. We're asking for 3 waivers. One is that the groundwater is less than 5 feet below grade. It's just a naturally occurring condition that we can't design around, so we're asking for that waiver. We're asking for a waiver to use a 4-foot groundwater in compliance with Title V rather than the 5-foot Sherborn requirement. And we're asking for a waiver to the on-site well only to reduce the 125-foot offset to 119 feet. And with that, I think I can turn it over for questions.
Okay, so when I look at the parcel as a whole, once one draws the radius around the well, you're pretty much limited to then this front part of the yard. And then I certainly, board appreciates the setback from the neighbor's well, meeting the standard requirement. And then you have a driveway. So this is the magic spot. So it looks reasonable to me. I don't have any particular questions. Anyone else on the board?
Yeah, this is an improvement over the existing system, especially moving it just a little further away from the on-site well
Mhm.
and making it
And are
a
there any-
functional system for the down gradient well.
Yep. And are there any abutters or any other folks in attendance who have any comments or questions?
I'm on the butter.
Well, hi, welcome.
Hi, I'm Tony Blanchett. I'm at 15 Russet Hill. My
Okay,
one
so
question is the provision regarding the perk test. I'm not sure I understand what the perk rate was for this.
Dan, would you like to respond?
We did two percolation tests. One was 4 minutes per inch and one was 5 minutes per inch. And basically what a percolation test is, it's gives us indication of what the infiltration capacities of the soils are. So based on that percolation rate, that dictates the size of the system. A smaller percolation rate results in a slightly smaller system. A larger percolation rate test result is a larger system.
So when you
And
take the test, you take the average of all the times. Is that right?
No, we have to take the worst case. We have to take the worst case scenario for percolation tests.
Okay, so for the second perk test, the first 2 or 3 minutes were less than an inch per 3 minutes. Am I saying that right? There's less than 3 minutes per inch.
Could be. So the rules on percolation tests are is we have to soak the test for 15 minutes. And then we measure how long it takes to drop overall 6 inches, but it's the final 3 inches from 3 inches to 6 inches is what we actually use for the design of the system. We discount the first 3 inches.
Okay. That was my question. I'm all set. Thank you.
okay. And Mark, did you have any particular comments about the system?
No, I think, Darrell, you brought out a good point. This seems to be the magical spot. It will increase the distances to both the abutters well as the on-site wells. So the location is making it better than what's there presently, as you noted.
We have, no one else has any other comments or questions. We'll move on to the going over the variances. All right. So do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.01 regarding groundwater offset being 5 feet, 4 feet is provided?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
And Darrell Beardsley, aye. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.02, again related to the depth to groundwater?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1 regarding the distance to the upgradient well, which is the property owner's well, and the abutter's well meets all required setbacks, and that's the condition we would rather see because depending on how people treat their system, may affect the quality of treatment that results from going through the system, and it seems to perhaps be a motivator for the owner if they're closer, their well is closer. So that's where we like to see the trade-off, and that's what they've done here. So. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And so I'll close the hearing. And are the plans ready for approval, Mark?
Yes, they are conditional to one deed recording. That deed recording will be for the prohibition for the use of a garbage grinder. I'd recommend approval with that deed recording.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the plans conditional to receipt of the garbage grinder deed restriction?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Okay, well, thank you. Dan?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, all right, back to Ames.
I think you mean Everett.
Oh, Everett, yes,
Yeah.
you're right. Okay. We still have the homeowners here.
Yep, we're still here.
Okay, great. I don't know. Any ideas on what you think you might
Yeah, I mean, we can
be
we can
willing to do?
eliminate the door up top and just like have it like open. Yeah, just like an open space with that closet in between, if that makes sense. Because it's yeah, that door is not like a huge. Yeah, that doesn't really like make or break anything for us if that door is not needed.
Okay, and is this a full height wall here?
Yeah, so that wall is already there, and it's like, yeah, that wall is already there, and it's finished. I don't know when the barn was made, but it has like old barn wood, like that wall, like all the way up, already.
Mhm. So for the board, sometimes we've looked at openings that it would not be just a matter of attaching some hinges and hanging a door easily, but looking for like a wider opening. Do you have any thoughts in this circumstance?
Yeah, I mean the floor, the vaulted ceilings, like what, 15 feet high? Like it would be very like if that was like an open, if that was an opening, it'd be pretty hard
be
just to
big, yeah.
hang a door.
Mhm.
If that was like open to the ceiling.
Oh, does this wall go all the way floor to ceiling, or it just goes up partway to the ceiling?
It goes all the way to the ceiling.
Okay. Yeah, no, we usually like to see these openings wider so that it feels more open as opposed to ready-made to be closed.
Yep.
Some of the finer points we look at. Diana?
I had a question about like on the other side where the closet is. Does that wall also go all the way up to the ceiling?
Yeah, there's no wall right. Sorry, which one is that? Where like
Well, where the arrow is right now, where, because on one side you're saying the wall goes all the way up to the ceiling, and right now it looks like there's a proposed door. So I'm wondering about the wall on the other side. Is that also all the way up to the ceiling? So at the moment you have an
It is.
opening? Or is
Yep. Everything goes, that whole wall where that yellow arrow is right now. If you go from top to the bottom, that all goes floor to ceiling right now.
Okay, and there's just an opening right now, or is there currently a door?
There's a door cut out right now.
Okay. Mm.
Mark, is it possible that that wall, I mean, this is like beyond what we do. Is that wall possibly structural?
We would have to have that determined by either a structural engineer or the building commissioner if he's willing to note it. But usually the architect or a building contractor may be able to indicate if they're support walls or structures, I should say.
I mean, for me to make this, given that we are finishing the space below it, the access to the space, instead of being through unfinished space, will now be through a nice new finished area. We have to make it not have a semblance of privacy for it to not meet the bedroom definition for me. And so, having that as open and unprivate as possible, would be ideal, so that, yes, someone couldn't come in an unpermitted fashion, put indoors and give that privacy. It sounds like to the left hand of the stairwell, the fact that that's just a half wall, that certainly meets that need. The presence of a closet for me is no issue whatsoever. It would be nice if then the space to the right of the stairwell that's currently closed off could be equally as open. Because otherwise that does become very tempting to be a bedroom if it is, a finished, properly conditioned. I would say it is somewhere in between properly and improperly conditioned now, it sounds like, if you can't be up there at all times of the year. But, that gets a little risky to become a bedroom. Especially if there's a 3/4 bath down right below it. And so I think my only hesitation to ask for that to be more open is, if this is a structural wall, I would want to think about that, I guess. Versus, and if it was a structural wall and they wanted to keep that up, because as soon as you start doing that, I know it becomes a whole different ballgame. Then, my inclination would be to not put I think you were proposing mini splits, to not put a mini split into that existing space that's already there. I think that's where I stand.
Yeah, I think that we're good to open, like, however, like, if you see that open, whatever footage that is, that it's open on the other side, like, we can open up that same opening right there, so it feels just as open, because, yeah, we have zero intent of making this a bedroom. Like, we have like 3 little girls, and they're all over with us, so we don't want anybody having a bedroom over on that side of the house all by themselves.
Yeah,
And
just wait till they're teenagers.
Yeah. Lock them all up there. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I had that scenario once, and now I have a teenager, and it's a different story. But and again, Daryl had pointed this out. It's not your use, it is the potential future use of the structure that we are looking at. It's not about how you guys are going to use it. I know that doesn't help you in this moment, but that is the perspective we have to take.
So we can't, usually what we do is try and evaluate what comes before us. So any suggestions are only like options that you might want to consider? And then it would really depend on the details coming back. But if you're proposing that just opening this to be the same width, as this over here, I don't know, do we think that's sufficiently wide, or, might you consider closets running up against the wall, and then the whole opening would be much greater between the two? Much less sense of privacy, less ease of closing off with just a door.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you guys need. And Yeah, because we'd rather not, since a septic just got put in, I just would rather not have to put in a whole nother septic
Right.
just for this.
And you can consider that in the future too, because the system currently, unless they change the state rules, and depending on what Mark, if he was to research for you to find out about the conditions with which the new system was just put in and whether it has the option to be expanded. There are some rules around that. That might be an option for the future if you wanted to pursue it and say, you know, yeah, we want to put the noisy teenagers over in a separate area. So anyway, you could talk to Mark about those technical details some other point, but
That's fine.
the more you can open this up, Julie brought up a great question about the bearing wall. Might be possible to put in columns instead of a wall. I mean, there are all sorts of technical solutions to that. I guess I would encourage you to think about, you know, what would appeal to you to do.
And I
And
guess
then feel free to
would
talk to Mark about it.
And what would your thoughts be about like opening that door to the same width as the other side, and then the kind of wall by the, I guess, the banister to the right of the stairwell, and then that wall to the right being, you know, short, so there's like no privacy.
Oh, this wall?
No, yes,
Oh,
that
this
one.
one.
Yep. And then the banister obviously is open, like to the stair, you know, the stairs going up right there.
I don't believe that's the area of concern. I think it's the 2 rooms, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
I mean, but having that open does help, but
Because it makes it more
having-
lofty, I guess, I was thinking. But
yes,
You-
it does.
Do you need the closet?
yeah, we don't need the closet. I was just thinking like board games and stuff. I'm just trying to keep clutter as
Understand.
much out of the room, but we don't need that closet. If
I mean, honestly, if you put a closet in either room, it wouldn't matter if that closet in the middle would disappear. Then you'd have a very wide open space between both rooms. But I'll ask the board to consider that as well. But I look at that closet and it does afford somewhat privacy to both sides of this space. Where if that closet gets fully removed, now you got a wide opening between the 2 rooms. And if you need closets, I don't think putting them inside the rooms would be an issue.
Right.
I'll wait for the
Put
board.
something over here. You could put something long
In
and
the corner.
thinner, and that would open up this space between the 2 to make it look like one. And again,
yeah, that works for us.
so okay. So I don't know. Does anyone have any other comments? I think if you can, you know, think about those things. They don't have to be fancy sketches. Run them by Mark, and he can give you some guidance. He knows pretty much how we evaluate these kinds of things. And then as you narrow in, you know, you can come back to the board and we'll review it, and we can do that.
I don't know what your timeline is, but the board meets on February 5th, which is 2 weeks from today. If you can have something, say by, we always like to have the agenda secured the best we can before that Wednesday. So maybe by the end of next week, January 30th, if you could have something to us, that gives you about not 7-8 days. If that's a possibility, we can get you on the February 5th agenda. You can
Yeah,
call
I
me.
mean, I'm literally gonna take this and just delete that closet. So is that what you guys are looking for? So, or yeah, because if I can try to Photoshop it real quick right now, but that's literally all I'm gonna do if that's what we're looking for.
Right. You just need to make sure that that wall here, though, is not essential.
Yeah.
All right.
To the support of the roof.
Yeah. And if it is, the board mentioned beams, you know, you could put beams in if you need to.
Beams and posts, or, you know, something kind of open and barn looking like.
Yeah. Excuse me.
And I guess I would say that if in fact that the existing floor to ceiling wall is structural and you don't want to have to do anything structural on that part. If I feel like the space that you're calling existing finished space is kind of like barely there. If that was truly unconditioned space, then it really wouldn't necessarily count. I mean, if it's freezing cold in the winter and if it's hot in the summer, then that's not conditioned space. And then I think we could potentially move around it that way. I mean, it would make it hard for you guys to use that space, but I think that would be, I'm just trying to anticipate if you do have a structural wall there, what your options could be.
All right. All right, yeah, we'll
Okay,
come
and-
back and yeah, get our structural engineer to look at that and come back for that next meeting.
Mhm. Okay, and as you're going through that redesign process, if you come up with any further questions, certainly contact Mark.
Yeah, give me a call, Keaton. I'd be glad to help.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right.
Okay, I
Did we-
believe Elizabeth, the owner of 11 Ames,
Ames.
has been with us. And thank you for your
Hello.
patience.
Okay.
Hi.
No problem.
Daryl, that's a septic
Mm.
plan for review as well as a floor plan. A septic plan came in first, designing a change to the
Okay,
tank
I'm going-
location. I'll let you get through this.
Yeah, Steve, I'm going to ask for your assistance.
Sure.
My computer's doing something funny, so.
So 11 Ames,
There should be a septic plan for.
that's the one you want to do first?
Yes, I'd suggest that first, and then yeah, that was the original request, and then we can go over. I had requested floor plans, and I thought it'd be appropriate to have the floor plans while we're doing this review too, but I think we can start with the septic plan and then go to the floor plans.
All right. People see that or
Not yet, Steve.
not yet?
Sometimes it's a two-step share. Oh, it's saying it's starting.
It was a nice car, but the plan is showing up too.
Okay, good.
So,
Zoom in a little bit.
yeah, and so this is a redrawing of replacement location for the septic tank. You'll see some at the house on the back side, some dark lines showing an addition. The proposal, from what I've seen now on the floor plans today, is to extend the bedroom to a larger bedroom. So they're not adding a bedroom, they're extending the present bedroom. But the septic tank, as you can see, is it's actually in a location where part of the foundation would go over it. So Eric Dickinson redrew the septic tank to be 12.8 feet from the proposed addition. And the septic system itself, the leaching field, is way in the back. That's almost to the end of the property. So that's not the issue. It was the septic tank location. And based on my review of this septic plan, I'd recommend, excuse me, losing my voice, I'd recommend approval of the septic plan as proposed. And I'm ready for any questions if the board has any.
So can we do that without going over the room count?
Well, then, you
Or-
know, I agree. I mean, they could
I mean,
change,
the change seems reasonable, but
the change for this area is fine, but maybe table this for a second while the board looks at the floor plans. That's a good suggestion now.
okay.
That way you can see the actual change to the bedroom on that side, as well as my question is the basement rooms.
Mhm.
So and this just came in today, so we received it from the builder. And we can enlarge that just a little bit. But that is the first floor plan you're seeing on the top there. And you'll see it's hard to focus myself, but let's see. So you have the garage, and correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, you're enlarging the present bedroom on that side?
It's correct. What we're looking at right now, though, is the existing
Oh, you're looking at,
like
we're looking at
basement
the
slash
existing.
ground floor. Yeah, with the blue line, like showing you where the
Yes, thank you.
additional garage slash basement space will go further
I
back.
appreciate it. My eyesight.
So this is the ground floor.
Thank you. It's the
That's okay.
ground.
I think
Not, maybe
right.
if you look at the first floor first. This is a ranch, and
Right.
that it threw me off because I said, wait a minute, I know there was a bedroom being extended. This is the first floor of the ranch, and you'll see the bedroom that's existing.
Correct.
I'm going to take the walls down and increase that bedroom to a larger bedroom.
I think if you scroll down, you'll actually see the full plan. Right. So that's now the plan
That's
for
the
the first, the downstairs or the lower level, and then next page should be the upper level, the first floor.
Thank you.
Sorry, no, yes, that's it. Right.
So as you can see, the house consists, oh, and Elizabeth, if you can help me too, the solid walls are shown, but the room that's off the side with the stairs going down or up, is that a sun porch or a deck?
Oh, sorry, what's called the family room, like all the way over on the left? Is
On
that
the
what you're
left.
talking about?
It's over on the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, oh, wait, sorry, where? Maybe
Yeah,
you can point,
so
or someone can
if
point
you're
with
looking at the plan, just go to the left side, the top, right there. Yeah, right with the
That's
curve.
an exterior deck.
It's a deck. Okay, thank you. I
Yeah,
wasn't for sure if
exterior
it was
deck.
a conditioned
Yeah.
sunroom or something. So that solves
No,
that.
the sunroom, we call it the sunroom, the family room is like a open space to the living area, but it's like 2 steps down from the living area.
Labeled as a family room. And then you
Yeah,
have,
what this is labeled as a family room, yeah.
and then so that's the family room would be counted as 1, the living room is 2. The kitchen with the dinette is open to the kitchen, I believe, that little dining table, the six
The
chairs
dining table is open to the living area.
to the living
Like
area.
that's all one. There's no wall or cased opening or anything. It's all just one big L-shaped room.
Okay, and usually we consider a kitchen to have a eating area, so, I mean, the board can ask questions on that. And then you have your bedroom, 2 bedrooms to the bottom of the plan, and an office and the bedroom on the top. So that would count as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms if we count the dining area as part of the kitchen eating area. But I'll let the board look at it to make sure they see it the same way.
Yes, I was wrestling with that, dining area, but it doesn't look like there's an eat-in kitchen, so. And there is some openness in the wall between the spaces, it looks like. Like a counter
Correct.
pass-through. Okay.
Yeah, there's a counter pass-through next to the door. So one of those openings is a door from the kitchen to where the table is shown. And then the upper one, like close to where the cursor is right now, is actually like a pass-through above the counter. So it's not a full opening. It's just a hole in the wall.
And where the office is labeled office, is that going to be an extension to the proposed addition in the back to be all 1 bedroom? Right where it says.
No, so that would be part of the addition, is moving the wall to accommodate that office. So
Okay.
that's like essentially what our current bedroom is right now.
That's what I thought, but you're going to move.
Yeah.
You're going to make that bedroom an office.
Essentially, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would increase the 1 room on the first floor.
Right, on this floor, right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly 8. It's hard to say because it's that dining area that might be the 8th room, but it's proposed if the board sees it that way.
Okay, and then
Mm,
we had
yep.
2 in the basement?
Yes, if you go to the basement plan, I think it's up a little further, maybe. Sorry, Sue.
Yeah, I think it was actually above where you were the page before. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
There's the garage, and a new garage under the new master bedroom area, and also an entranceway with a closed door to a full bath, a 3/4 bath, and another 2 rooms. So, I mean, if these 2 rooms become 9 and 10, then a deed recording may be needed if they're below grade. But if that dining area is considered part of the kitchen, then it would go up to 9 rooms. And so that's for discussion. Any other consideration that was bringing us to the board to, why I brought this to the board, is that the door from the garage to the mudroom creates privacy for those 2 rooms in that bathroom. So I just wanted the board to look at that to see if that's concerning, because could this be used such as, not maybe for your case, Elizabeth, but if someone was to move in, could it be an in-law apartment? You know, something like that, with that door from the garage to that entryway to the mudroom, which has within it the 3/4 bathroom and the 2 rooms. But a question, Elizabeth, these rooms that are there, are they half below grade or more than half below?
Yes. I don't know precisely, but yes, they're like about half below grade. So we have like half windows
And from the,
in the in the front.
okay.
The
And,
back, yeah.
okay. And one other additional question, if I may, do you have a walkout from either one of these rooms? Outside.
What's called the exercise room, that back is a slider to the backyard.
But the one that's called playroom, the one that's called the playroom, does that have any walkouts from it?
Like to the exterior, no. You
Yes,
have to
okay.
exit to
It's
the
just
mudroom.
Okay, thank you. So,
Yeah, so where the cursor is now, that's a glass sliding door.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I brought it to the board, is trying to get these rooms described and determine the privacy, as we just discussed on the other building proposal, and go from there. And the dining room, how do we consider the dining room? Or the dining table?
Margaret,
Right.
if you don't mind me saying that the downstairs rooms, the only thing we're changing is to expand that mudroom area. So they are, if we look at the existing plans, they are already set up.
Oh,
this way.
understandable.
So
It's just-
only thing, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to be
Thank you.
clear, we're not adding those rooms or anything. We're pushing back that wall that's now at the diagonal to make a little more space with some storage
Okay.
for the mudroom.
Thank you for the update, because we just received the update, so I appreciate you being here.
Yeah. So that's the only proposed change in the interior downstairs, is sort of changing that wall, like the angled wall in the playroom, and pushing back the wall in the exercise room to give us like those bench and cubbies and a little more space to drop kids' backpacks when we enter.
Well, we appreciate that, and it's,
Yeah.
one looks at the whole picture though of how, not maybe for your use, but future use, so that's why I brought it tonight, just so they can take a look at it. So Dara, I'll
So-
leave it to the board at this.
Yeah, I do have a question about the windows in the playroom. Are they those window wells where there's, a small window surrounded by sort of a half circle to hold the dirt back, or is
No,
the
they're
soil
not.
not up that high?
No, they're not wells. There's I'm actually looking at it right now on the other side of my monitor. It's like my eyes would be at the level of someone's feet if they walked in the front of our house as I'm sitting at my desk, if that helps. I don't know how to how else to describe it. It's not a well, but it's like a half. They're definitely like short windows, and a person walking in the front of our house would be, well, because there's a step up, right? So they'd be like entering from our step at sort of the middle of the house. So it's like a split ranch, right?
Yep, okay. It sounds like size of those couldn't be to code for egress. but maybe a little larger than what we sometimes see in basements, or see a lot of basement rooms with no windows. So I'm always concerned about the egress that's required for a bedroom. Does anyone else on the, so I'm wrestling with that, and then the dining area. But again, that the kitchen doesn't seem to have any eating space within it. I think I'm somewhat leaning towards considering that part of the kitchen. Anybody else?
It would be easier if the kitchen was a little bit more open into that space. I recognize there's a door there. I understand there's a kind of a pass-through, functionally kind of a window. Yeah, it's tricky. It's right on the line.
Right.
I just haven't had time to mull this over. We just, for me, usually I would sit there and look at this like 5 times before the meeting, and I've only opened it now at the meeting since it just came in. So I'm not in a rush necessarily to make a decision tonight myself.
And if I may, a possible consideration, Elizabeth, is when you might have going into a possible 10th room, because you're allowed 9 rooms for a 4-bedroom septic. But when you're going into a 10th room, if it's a basement room more than half below grade, sometimes the board will request a deed recording to indicate that room cannot be used as a bedroom. So that's I believe the board may want to chime in on that, but that's a possibility as well.
Yes, that's along the lines of what I was thinking about the size of the window, because I know when you have to provide an ample sized window for egress from a bedroom, so that there's a second egress. Or there could be 2 doors, I suppose, but typically it's a door and a window are the egress choices. Diana? You're on mute.
All right. Could you move back to the basement? I wanted to take a look at the. Okay, so I'm looking at the basement. So there's a door in between to the outside at the bottom by the stairwell to the outside. Right there, yes.
Or is that on the first floor?
Elizabeth, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry, because it's a split level, that's our front door, and you have an ability to go half up to the main living area or half down to the basement. So it's not at the same level as the basement. It's I guess it's called it's called a raised ranch. No, it's not split because it's a raised ranch. My architect informed me of that.
Hence the mudroom.
Sorry, what was that about the mudroom?
I was gonna say that's why your mudroom is down there. You go in, you go down, and there's your mudroom.
Right. We just have like a landing when we enter, so the mudroom would be down, and then the living space would be up at the top.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the other issue is the market's a 4-bedroom system currently.
Yes.
And okay, so they only have 3 bedrooms.
I can double, Daryl, because this came in so fast, I didn't have a chance to review.
Yeah.
Old septic.
Okay, so that would be something to double check.
Yeah.
But they do have the option to have another bedroom.
No, they have 4 bedrooms right now, I believe.
Do
We
they?
go to the
Am I
first,
miscounting?
maybe I'm miscounting. Let me just,
No, because they're
Oh,
adding an office.
oh, they're calling it an office. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have three. Yeah.
So in the basement, if it's 9 rooms, under that assumption, the basement exercise room could be a bedroom. It has egress. I mean, they don't have to make it a bedroom, but should it become a bedroom, that wouldn't be an issue. It's still this playroom. Possible deed restriction. Although, again, if it's 9 rooms, then they're okay at the moment. So then is the biggest issue how we handle the dining room. And that may take some thought.
Just so you know, the designer has indicated it's a 4-bedroom house on this change of tank plan, but I can confirm that. But I presume he's already checked our records.
Okay, so something else, as Julie mentioned, I don't know if we're gonna be able to resolve this tonight, and we still have another very large project to review. Is to consider is there any more opening up between the kitchen and this eating area that might be possible to do without compromising the house structurally? If that was of interest to the owner. Because if we've had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it was 4 bedrooms and 9 rooms. We don't need to agonize over the deed restriction issues for the basement. So does the board feel that you want more time to digest this concept of this room as it stands now? And maybe for the homeowner to think about just some option to make that an easier decision, or whether we want to look at deed restrictions.
For me, I would like a little more time to look at this. I think I would like to hear from the homeowner, her timeline, if she is able to, for the building permit. There's 2 things before us, right? We have the potential building permit, or not the potential, the building permit, and we have the septic tank relocation. I'm not sure if we need to, I don't see a reason right now why we can't take the septic tank relocation. Because I presume that the proposed construction is why they're relocating it, right? And so potentially we could take that, and then if we could revisit the building permit at the next meeting. How does that work for you, Elizabeth?
That's fine. I believe, yeah, and I think this is sort of what we were struggling with in terms of the catch-22 we're in here. Obviously, yes, we're obviously not just relocating the tank for the purposes of relocating the tank. I thought, and I may be misunderstanding what was relayed to me from someone at the town, that we would not be issued a building permit without the tank being moved first, which was why we were taking this as a 2-step process. But completely understand that they're interrelated. So, you know, any guidance you guys have on how we should proceed with those 2 issues. If that's the case, then we need to go. We certainly don't want to Mark, the conversation I had with Mark earlier today, we don't want to pay to move the tank and then not be approved for the building, right? That would be a waste of money on our part. But at the same time, you know, like I said, we were under the impression we did need to move the tank because we can't build obviously on top of it, and that the building permit wouldn't be issued without the tank being moved. So again, and obviously right now it's 3 degrees and we're not digging out our septic. So I think we have a little bit of time, you know, to do this. So however you all see proceeding, you know, it is fine by us, I think, because yes, we would like to know that we're in the clear with what we would like to do before we move the septic.
Sure.
before we
and-
go ahead and actually do it.
Mhm. Okay. Right, I think, Julie, good point. We can approve this, just know that it doesn't mean that the next step is approved, but at least you would have it in hand and be ready to go if the rest clears appropriately.
And does that mean we can discuss it at the next meeting? Should I plan to join in that one
Yeah.
again in
Yeah.
2 weeks? Okay.
Daryl, it sounds like
And you
Elizabeth,
don't need, oh, sorry.
I mean, Elizabeth, it sounds like you would prefer these to travel together. Functionally, they need to travel together for you from your standpoint, even if we might
I
see.
think so.
So then,
Yeah.
and given that you're right, you're not doing anything between now and 2 weeks, I imagine, it would,
Yeah.
seems to make sense for us to kind of dig into this at the next meeting, potentially, when we've had more time to really look at these building plans. So my inclination is to defer this to the 5th.
And just so the
So I
board,
can go either way.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, I don't know if you have a preference.
well, just so the board knows, conservation approval was received on January 10th, so there is time when the actual start of the plan reviews is completed and either approved or disapproved, but I don't see a problem recommending approval of the septic tank change. The plan is good for 2 years. And then bring back the discussion on the building application. It doesn't mean you have to install it, Elizabeth, but you'll have 2 years on the septic permit granted, but it can wait till the 5th. I'll leave it up to you and the board.
Given the 2-year time period, if you can't get started with it anyway until the other is decided, then I could see waiting and getting the approval at the same time, because the start of your 2 years would be a little bit in the future.
Or that's fine. Like I said, I'll defer however you all prefer to do it. I think hoping this doesn't take us 2 years, so hopefully we can do it before that regardless. But yes, if it makes sense to wait 2 weeks, then we can talk about it again in 2 weeks. That's fine.
Okay. All right.
And just to confirm, is there anything else you need from us between now, or you'll just take some time to look at between now and the 5th, or you have what you need and I'll be back on the 5th and we can discuss again.
Daryl,
The only thing go ahead, Mark.
No, sometimes the board asks for pictures. I don't know if that would be helpful for any of the spaces being questioned, but I'll leave that up to the board, but pictures do help sometimes to see the space.
Maybe of the playroom windows, relative to the space. Understand that, and also think about how to make the dining area more part of the kitchen. I'm not sure that we'll end up thinking that's necessary, but just in case.
Maybe include a picture of that, the transition between the dining and the kitchen where the pass-through and that doorway is. I mean, perhaps it is far more open than what I have in my mind. It would be helpful to have a picture.
Okay.
Okay. So certainly you can relay any other thoughts or questions or comments that come up between now and the next meeting through the office or through Mark.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So I would like to switch now to the discussion of the Brush Hill Homes project, and we have a septic plan for review. Okay.
Is
I don't know
that,
if it's, oh, thank you. Yep.
yeah,
got it.
sorry.
All right. So we have, this is a revision to what we've seen previously. This came in at the end of December and has been reviewed by the supplemental health agent, who's from Stantec, and so he's here this evening, Mark Bartlett. And
Good evening, everyone.
yes, hello. And provided comments, both in terms of any kind of outstanding plan needs that was relayed to the applicant's team, and there have been responses made to those comments already. And then there were also some additional issues, largely around the issue of mounding at the site. So Mark, I don't know, maybe we'll have you give kind of just an overview of where you were for the board, and then we'll see what kind of questions we might have, and we'll also hear from the, I see representatives from DGT, and they are the designers of the system as well.
Fair enough.
So you can start off, Mark.
Okay. Well, as you know, I wrote my first memo to the board on January 7th. The applicant got back to us on the 15th, January 15th, with replies. And so my latest memo before you is dated January 17th, with the response to their responses. There were 16 comments all totaled. Of those 16, in my view, 10 are resolved or have been resolved by the applicant's recently respond on the 15th. Those comments that were, I believe, are resolved are numbers 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 14. There are some actions that they need to take to resolve 4 of the comments. Those are comments 2, 3, 12, and 13. And then the 2 big items, the last 2 comments, 15 and 16, the chair and I have discussed these on a couple of occasions. They're requests and analysis and requests concerning mounding that was brought to the table by one of the abutters engineers, Scott Horsley. We took a look at it, as you know from reading our memo, found a different view of it, but not too radically different, but certainly different. And we do believe that some mounding will occur, but I don't believe it'll occur to the extent that Mr. Horsley had predicted. But he then came in with some I did see it. Julie sent me a copy of his latest letter, and he's dialed it back to about a mounding influence of 1.4 feet. I had seen the worst case mounding of being 0.7 feet. And in terms of mounding, there are several parameters that can influence it greatly. Mr. Horsley and I agree on just about all of the input parameters except for depth to bedrock, which indirectly defines the saturated thickness of the aquifer at the site. My interpretation of nearby wells and depth to bedrock was that an assumption of 16 feet is appropriate. But as I said in one of my recommendations, I think it was number 15 or 16, that the only way to really know is for the applicant to conduct some borings in the leaching area and go to refusal. In other words, drill down until you hit refusal with a drill rig. Then you'll know truly what the saturated thickness is. But I made what I thought was a more reasonable approach and came up with a number that was the most conservative of all the nearby wells that had found bedrock. And then deducted the vadose zone, which is above the estimated high water table determined the depth of 16 feet as an estimate. But again, that affects the results. So if Mr. Horsley had a mounding influence of 1.4 feet using only 7.5 feet of saturated thickness, and I used about double that saturated thickness, then you had a mounding effect in my analysis of 0.7 feet. So there you have it. That's the influence that you'll see from saturated thickness. The applicant, of course, is taking the position in their response that, and it's recognized that Title V does not require mounding analysis if you have less than 2,000 gallons a day. Why 2,000 gallons a day? Well, it's a figure the department has evaluated, I'm sure, over many decades in evaluating the size of systems, and those systems that are worthy of analysis are those larger systems greater than 2,000 gallons a day. I doubt the department would vary that view. I recommended you could reach out to them and ask them. Because Mr. Horsley brought it to the table, it was worth looking at, and so we did. But I think in the end of the day, I had suggested perhaps in a phone call with the chair that maybe a compromise is to ask the developer applicant to raise the system a foot, which would be more than the 0.7 foot mound I have estimated, and would be, I think, feasible for my assessment of the site, but I'd leave that to their engineer. And that's something that's, I think, a reasonable request, but it's up to the board. It's a policy decision. And all of this is, frankly, on items 15 and 16 come down to the board's discretion as to how they want to proceed. So I hope that little summary helps, but if you want to drill into any particular item on the letter, we'd be happy to.
Okay, so I think we'll get to that. First, just laying the groundwork. So we have two things that the board needs to do. One is to assess whether this system is compliant with Title V. And then the other is how we may treat any of the requested waivers, or not that we would treat them, how we would evaluate them and what recommendations we might pass on to the ZBA. So from the Title V compliance standpoint, would you like to just briefly summarize that for the board?
Yeah, I find that under Title V, that they do comply with Title V rules. I've asked them to clarify in comment 2 to be very specific that the foundation drains that they've shown on the plan, the latest revised plan, are in fact the only foundation drains. If they were to put foundation drains elsewhere, they could be non-compliant. But as it stands, and they stand by their current design, it's compliant for that. I went through all of the items, 1, 2, 3, I'm looking at them here. 4 is fine. 5 is test pits were adequate for defending the design. I didn't have a problem with the test pits and perk tests that they chose. They also did permeability testing on the site, which, as I said, was an important value to look at for evaluating mounding. But again, keeping focused on Title V, item 6 was good. Item 7 is complies with Title V. There's no environmental impact report required by Title V. It is a local requirement they're seeking waiver on. Item 8 is the leaching field had to be 5 feet above high groundwater, but that's not Title V. And so they comply with Title V. Item 9.
Depending on how we take the mounding into account.
Yes, exactly. And a good point, Madam Chair. The Title V doesn't specifically say for flows less than 2,000 gallons a day that there's any mounding analysis required. That's a fact. But if we, having looked at the mounding and haven't found, at least in our view, some mounding is likely, and I'm saying it's probably in the neighborhood of 0.7 feet, then this leads to the discussion of if you really want to have 4 foot of separation at all times, then you would raise that field by, again, I'm conservatively saying a foot. So that's the derivation of that. But under Title V, you're required to have 4 foot of separation to estimated seasonal high groundwater, period. It doesn't say in Title V, estimated seasonal high groundwater plus mounding. This is a distinction that is come to the table because of analysis and discussions and the abutters advocate. And so it's before the board. It's not something you can sweep away. The board has to decide what they want to do with that. But in terms of Title V, my view is that it complies. Item 9, it's all local rule, not Title V. Item 10, they didn't comply, but they have since revised the design on item 10, so it complies. Remove and replace limits are defined properly, so now it complies. Item 12 had to do with, we're getting into the discussion of mounding and the retaining wall. Their retaining wall complies with Title V setbacks. It's in fact greater than the minimum of 10 feet. The wall face is 15 feet from the reserve trench and 19 feet from the nearest active trench. The wall does not extend down into the water table. It's well above the water table. I don't see any interaction between the mound and the wall as designed. I do recommend in item 12 that they have a structural engineer look at this. I can't say specifically that's a Title V request, but it is really building code driven, and it is good practice. So, but in terms of Title V and the wall, I believe they're compliant. Item 13 was where we get into discussion of shared systems. And at first glance, I thought this was a shared system under Title V. The applicant came back and corrected us and said, no, we're proposing this as a whole. These 4 homes are as a condominium, quote unquote, condominium. As I've discussed with the chair, condominium law is very well established in the Commonwealth. Title V and Mass DEP were comfortable with condominiums for a while before they even proposed the shared system regs. Nevertheless, as a condo, I recommended that the applicant submit to the board a copy of the condominium master deed, and also, very important, is a copy of their proposed operation and maintenance plan and who's going to maintain this. We understand under condo law that they have to pay for all the maintenance, but it's also equally important that the applicant convince the board that there'll be a capital reserve as well. So if this leaching field has to be replaced in 10, 15, 20 years, or if a pump on the pump system goes, or if a septic tank has to be replaced, that they'll have the funds in reserve to do that and not have to seek out funds at that time. So those are important issues that are in Title V under the shared system regulations. I think they're relevant, and I recommended to the board that you ensure that they comply with Title V by getting those items I've discussed. Again, O&M plan, financing, how they're going to finance any kind of future capital expenditure out of the condo fund and their condo fees, and get a copy of that O&M plan so you can see that it is adequate. So bottom line is they comply with Title V as long as they submit those documents that are important under the condominium ownership process, and that the board can get comfortable with that. I can't imagine why the applicant would object to submitting those to you, because I think it's important for everyone to have those documents. So I hope that's it's a long-winded answer, Madam Chair, but I do say Title V is compliant with the actions that they have to take.
Yeah, this is a nice summary. So do any members of the board have questions?
Can we
Or-
just revisit the wall and the recommendation for the impervious barrier?
Right.
I don't I do not think that in the revised plan that was called out, but that's why this is your recommendation, right?
It's the latest one that stands, Julie, is that they, as a precaution, and even though the wall doesn't intercept groundwater, and even though it is more than the minimum setback from Title 5, I think it's good practice to have a membrane in that face of the wall that faces the septic's leaching area. And the membrane would just protect, if there should there be some sort of strange short circuiting going on, the wall would be well protected with that membrane. And nothing would bleed out through the wall. In other words, this is a public health issue here. You don't want that. I'm not saying it's likely to happen. I think it's very unlikely, frankly. But I think if you're building a wall and you're getting a structural engineer to look at it, and he's taking into effect the geotechnical issues that I've mentioned, I think it's prudent to have them put in a membrane on that wall as well.
And would that have any influence potentially on a change in mounding dynamics, in your opinion?
Not in my opinion, no.
Because it wouldn't be impeding the flow, perhaps, or having any buildup?
Well, the flow from the soil absorption system will go down vertically. There'll be some radial movement, but not enough to interact with the wall.
Because of it not being in groundwater?
It's well above the water table.
Like a,
Yeah, it's well above the water table. And if it's interacting with the wall that's well above the water table, we have serious problems that shouldn't be occurring if it's built properly. It's designed properly. I'm just saying it should not occur. The wall is literally the purpose of that wall. It's not a breakout wall. It really, the purpose of that wall is to elevate the system properly above grade, so that you start off anyway with 4 foot of separation from estimated high water table. And raising the whole system a foot could be, I think it's feasible. I think they could raise it another foot. They have to extend that wall up another foot, not down, but up. And that's a discussion for a later time if they choose to do it.
okay, anyone else on the board have questions about what you've heard and looked at? Diana?
Okay, did have a question about raising the system. You're saying a foot. What, besides the wall, what other impacts would that have?
Well, that's a good question. They have a slope going across that field now. Title 5 requires minimum 2% slope, and that's there. So if they raise the wall a foot, then they have to slope back at 2% from there back to the homes. But I believe it's all doable, because if you look at the elevations of the 2 of the homes right there near the field are slab on grade construction. They're not foundations. And the slab elevations are proposed high enough that even if they raise the soil absorption system field by a foot, they would still be below the slabs on those grades. So there's an interaction for sure, Diane. You have to be careful here. If you raise it 2 feet, then you'd have to raise the home sites, you see. But it's feasible, in my opinion. I would defer to their engineer though, because they're designing it, not me. So I'm just suggesting in my expert opinion, looking at it, that it's feasible.
So I'd like to take this moment to ask DGT whether you have considered the possibility of that option and the impacts to the design and any issues you'd like to raise. if you've had a chance to look into that.
Hi, good evening, Bert Corey with DGT.
Bert, let me just
Hi.
Sure.
let me just give a preamble if I can.
Okay.
What DGT was asked to do was to design a Title V compliant system. And I believe we've heard tonight that they have in fact designed a Title V compliant system. That was the goal. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's what we did.
So is then the answer that DGT has not considered what the repercussions would be of raising the system further?
Well, I guess I'm unclear on what we're talking about at this point. Are we talking about whether the system is Title V compliant, or are we talking about something else?
We're talking about a mix in some respects.
But in some ways, I find it a little uncomfortable, and I've expressed this before, including kind of in the review process, that we mix and match the two sets of regulations, because your charge, as this board knows, is to review the system under Title V. To the extent you want to review the system under your local regulations, you're of course welcome to do that, and you're of course welcome to provide your thoughts to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which you generally do. But I find it difficult, and I don't think it's good practice to mix and match those conversations, because I think it can get confusing to board members, it can get confusing to applicants, it can get confusing to neighbors.
All right, then I'll try to clear that up a bit.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
While mounding analysis was not a requirement under our regulations, and again, that's another discussion, and under Title V, that information has come to the board, and it is the Board of Health's duty to consider information that could have an impact on the how we decide whether this system is going to be protective of the groundwater resources that people rely on for drinking water or not. And so then this issue of is there going to be mounding and how high has come up through that process of getting outside information beyond your team of folks.
I mean, I certainly
responsibility to look into that and evaluate.
I certainly
of that.
I
So
certainly.
It is
Wait, let me know when it's okay for me to speak, please.
I will. So I don't know if there are any other board members who would like to weigh in on this distinction of Title V compliant. Title V is looking for 4 feet of separation, and that's what is being called into question by these analyses. And that's why we're considering it now.
I'm going to raise my real hand. Sorry.
Go ahead, Julie.
I'm going to raise my real life hand. Okay. So I agree with Mark as well as Bob that Title V clearly for this system, which is less than 2,000, does not require for the application a groundwater mounding study. I think we're all in agreement with that. As such, I don't think we would ask for additional borings. Certainly, if you wanted to provide them, you'd be welcome to do so. But based on your responses, I don't think that's where you're going. And so then the next question for me becomes, what is the intent of Title V in terms of maintaining that 4 feet of separation? And so in my reading of Title V, in choosing a 2,000 GPD threshold, there's clearly a dynamic between the volume of design flow and the likelihood of a groundwater mound that reduces that 4 foot of separation. As a regulator, you have to choose a line someplace, right? Whether or not they chose it at 2,000, 1,800, 2,200, I'm sure that there is a historical logic to that. But the point is they're directly proportionate. The volume of flow determines the likelihood of a groundwater mound that is beyond an inch or 2 inch or 3 inches. What is, when I look at Title V of, well, what if you do have a groundwater mound? What does Title V tell you to do with that? Then they say, take that into account with the groundwater separation and maintain 4 feet. And that's what I'm looking at here is, okay, we have a unusual situation in that we're fully aware of the fact that at least for some portion of the year, not the entire year, some portion of the year, when the seasonal groundwater is high, we will not have that 4 foot of separation. And so we've never, to my knowledge, has the board knowingly approved a system that does not maintain the regulatory separation between groundwater and the bottom of a system. And so my inclination in reading Title V and thinking about the precedent of how the board responds is, you know, I would like to see the system raise that foot. We can then have really strong assurances that the 4 foot of separation that is described in Title V will be maintained. And so that's where we're going in talking to Mr. Corey is, you know, it looks like this could be possible. We would like to hear from you how that would play out in terms of the design of the system.
Julie, may I respond? I've been patiently waiting.
You can, and then I was hoping that Mr. Corey would also be able to respond.
So the point I would like to make is that Mark has done what I'm sure is a good analysis, but he's done an analysis based on the most conservative assumptions that he could make. And I'm not faulting him for that, right? In other words, given the lack of data, he has assumed the worst case for where the bedrock is located, based on looking at a bunch of wells that are reasonably far away. I think that it's speculative to say that 7/10 of an inch is the proper number for groundwater mounding. We don't know, and we're not required to know. That's not what Title V is asking of us here. They chose a number of 2,000, and that would indicate to all of us that they're not concerned about this issue at 1,300 gallons. And, you know, a full 1/3 below the threshold that triggers this type of analysis. So we haven't done the testing that would be required, and therefore we can't with any confidence know what that mounding is or what it would be. And Mark, am I thinking about that wrong?
Well, if I'm allowed to talk, I will speak here.
We're a little less formal in this town than
Okay,
in others.
that's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't say I used conservative values. I think the person that did that was Scott Horsley. His values were, in my view, more conservative. At the end of the day, he came up with a revised analysis, which I happened to look at briefly today.
Nobody shared that with me, Mark.
I understand. And all I can tell you is that his revised analysis corrected some things I had found that were incorrect. And he came up with a value of 1.4 feet. My value is 0.7 feet, not 0.7 inches, but 0.7 feet. So I'm about half of what his value was. And he assumed what I thought was very conservative depth of saturated thickness, which if you understand in layman's terms is depth of bedrock that's saturated under estimated seasonal high groundwater conditions. He had 7.5 feet. I made it 16 feet based on what I thought were reasonable assumptions, not necessarily conservative, but certainly more conservative than liberal. Okay. But Horsley was very conservative, extremely conservative. He came up with 1.4 feet. I'm still not convinced that actually would occur. So let me just say, in terms of the board, You know, the board's rule is 5 feet. Obviously, they're not holding anyone to 5 feet here. And the board's perspective is local board of health, and they're acting independently of the ZBA. They have the right to do that. They are looking at the discussion of mounting between what Horsley did and what Stantec did. And they're saying, okay, well, Title V does require a full foot of separation. In my discussion with the chair anyway, I suggested, look, a compromise might be, and it's not necessarily saying you're still standing by Title V here. You're not mixing anything. It's just an interpretation from the local board's perspective of best compliance with Title V would be if the system were raised. For better or worse, mounding is out there. The information is out there. It's something they've seen. It's something they've considered. And it's something, frankly, your engineer should look at and has considered. And that being the case, maybe it's good practice. Just saying here, good practice, not necessarily stomping all over Title V. In fact, it's supported by Title V, as Julie said, is, hey, make an accommodation. If it's doable and you can raise the field a foot, I think it's on the board's perspective, it's a pretty reasonable request in my view to ask that. And I'm not saying I don't think it confuses anyone anywhere. It's just straightforward. It's best practice, try to achieve the best design you can. And so I'm hoping your engineer will talk about it.
So let me ask you this. Why wouldn't we raise it by the amount that you have indicated in your analysis?
By 0.7 feet?
Yes.
You could.
Okay.
You could. I had suggested to the chair, let me just finish, Bob.
Sure.
I had suggested to the chair, look, it's simpler if you just say, given there's a tolerance here and Horsley had 1.4, I had 0.7, you could almost say it's splitting the difference. Look, and a foot is a nice even number for contractors to achieve. It's like one more foot. That's it. There's no confusion on your part as the developer owner. Less likely to go wrong. The engineers feel better about it because it's a nice round number. And so I had suggested, look, just raise it a foot. It looked feasible. I'm not designing this. It's up to your engineer to chime in on that. But if it's doable, I think it provides a little margin of safety to the Title V 4 foot of separation. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. So let me just ask kind of a more general question, and I'll ask it really of the board. And if Mark, you want to comment, I think that would be great. I think it would be healthy to go back through some of these other issues because I think we've worked hard to try to answer particularly your concerns because you're the one who's expressed them, and Tetra Tech representing the ZBA, which I hope has been shared with you.
Yes.
And we've worked very hard to kind of answer all of those, and I think it's been a good process thus far. But here's what I would say, and part of it's, Mark, you're coming into a process with me and the board without any of the history that we have together, and it's not been easy over a number of years. And here's what I would propose here tonight. If the board can find its way to be able to say, and not necessarily to vote tonight, but to find its way to say to me, Bob, we've had Stantec take a hard look at this system within the context of the project that you've proposed. And if you raise the system by the 1 foot that you're talking about, and we go through all of these other things, can we get an agreement that the board not only will vote to approve the Title V plan, but also to tell the ZBA that they support this septic system and this project as designed? Because that's where I think we are. And what I have found is that you say that, hey, Bob, what about an extra foot? And I say, yeah. And then there's 12 more things. And, you know, I want to, I want to work with people, and I always have. It always has, it hasn't often worked out that way with this board and with me, unfortunately, with regard to affordable housing. I have had success with this board with market rate housing, but not with affordable housing. And so I guess that's kind of my ask is, you know, are we there to not only say this is a Title V compliant project, proposal, which I think you've said several times tonight, and I'm appreciative of that very careful review and of those comments. But I'd like to kind of package this up into what I need, which is I need support from the board, not only under Title V, but to tell the ZBA they're good with this project, that you did a thorough review, they've done a thorough review, and we're ready to go. And Bob's going to give us that extra foot, which does not come at zero cost, as you well know, you know, to get this over the finish line. But I'm afraid if I say, yeah, I'll give you that extra foot tonight, that I'm just going to get nickel and dime to, you know, to death over another, you know, number period of time. And I realize, Mark, that you're kind of coming into the middle of a situation, and I apologize for that. But anyway, that's my thought to the board, and I hope that's clear. And I don't mean to keep Bert from speaking tonight. Bert's welcome to say what he wanted, but I really don't feel like this is a technical issue. But it's more of a lot of these are legal issues, right? They're you know, whether it's the shared system. Mark, I completely agree with what you've asked for, and I actually said that in my response. I'll give you the master deed. I've done this at an 18-home project in Sherborn not that many years ago. It's a well-trod ground. You have a master deed. The condominium association is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the system. They're required by law to put money aside. It all works. And I have no problem with that. And I think I tried to say that in my letter to you. I don't want to be governed by the Title V shared system because it gets into a lot of stuff that is not necessary in this case and not appropriate, frankly. But anyway, I kind of want to get through all of these issues to the extent possible, and let's package up an agreement that we've got a project that this board can support, because that's really what I'm looking for, obviously. And Bert, weigh in, Bert. I apologize. Go for it. Are we good? Are we good raising it a
hold
foot?
on. Okay, just a moment. That is the question that we did pose to Bert.
Yes.
I'd like to take issue with the difference of opinion that we do not nickel and dime you.
Well,
we have
okay.
technical rigor that we choose to go through,
Sure.
and we have sometimes differences of opinion with you.
Okay.
I
apologize for characterizing
not
that way.
necessary to analyze a project.
I apologize,
And our
Daryl. I
goal
should not have
tonight-
characterized it that way. I apologize.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And our goal tonight was to have the board have a chance to together and with Mark here and with your consultants here as well to just explore any of the areas that we have questions about. And we, given the late hour, we are not going to be making our best decisions this evening. We're going to take that up at the next meeting to finalize, but I'd like the board to have a chance to get out any of the questions that they have. I think Mark wrote a very comprehensive report that had a lot of detail, which made it easy for us to have that chance to digest it. So before we swing back to Bert, has there do the board members have any questions or concerns that you'd like to raise now before we just ask Bert if he, or DGT, whether they have had a chance to consider the issue of raising the system or not? But I just want to give a little break in case anyone has anything else they'd like to ask or express. Since we don't get, this is our time to talk. These meetings are it for the board as a whole. No, I'm not seeing any hands up just yet, but
Daryl,
board members certainly feel free to interject.
Daryl, I would like to actually finish on this topic. We can revisit other, I would like to see through this discussion on this point before we potentially go to any other points. And I am eager to hear from Mr. Corey.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Hi.
We read the letters, just like Bob reads the letters. You know, and Kevin and I have, you know, obviously we're the engineers on the project. We read every line. We look at everything that people are saying. And we, you know, we take it to heart. Obviously, we're working on a design, and you know, there's a peer reviewer out there that, you know, wants to really, you know, dive into our thoughts. Um, so when we got the comment about the, you know, the mounding, and actually, Mark, you did a fantastic job. I was actually quite pleased when I saw the write-up that you did on the groundwater mounding analysis. It was spot on. Because I also did an analysis on that too. Um, you did mention something that I actually didn't realize, and I didn't realize that it was in a certain guidelines. It was the 80% of the flow.
Right.
We all know that Title V is a peak flow, and it's typically 2 times the amount of water usage that you would expect. So the water use that would be applied is most likely going to be about 50% of the design flow. Not that you're going to do the groundwater mounding analysis with that, but it would be even lower. And then, of course, if we did see that the depth to bedrock was even deeper, then, you know, the groundwater mounding essentially goes away. You know, but going back to the original question about raising it a foot, you know, I was looking at it from the point of view of, all right, so there's about 9 inches difference. And if we raise it 9 inches, what would that do to us? I looked at it really, you know, casually, briefly. You know, we worked for Bob, and we needed to, you know, confer with Bob to see if that's the direction that he would want us to go in, because he pays us a lot of money to do that. But looking at it on the surface, we're not talking about a lot of grade change here.
No.
But that grade change does add up to a certain volume or a fill volume of more material that would have to be trucked into the site, and more material that has to be paid for. You know, a foot isn't too much to overcome when we're looking at a fairly large site to put these 4 houses on. So it is something that, you know, we could take a look at. I'm sure we'll be having a conversation with Bob tomorrow morning, you know, as to whether we dive into something like that. But on the surface, you know, you're not asking for 2 feet or 3 feet, or, you know, changing a lot. It's, you know, I kind of lean towards the 9 inches, but I also agree with you that, look, if the contour says, you know, 200 today, and it's going to say 201 tomorrow, that makes it a lot easier for us. 9 inches is better for Bob, and it kind of defines what we're actually going after. So we don't mind, you know, moving the grades or the contours around in order to achieve something like that, just to minimize the amount of fill that would have to be added into the system. And as far as your point with the impermeable barrier, yeah, we originally had that on the system. We decided to take it out just because it really wasn't we spread the retaining walls out far enough where we really didn't need that impermeable barrier. But you know, point well taken. You know, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
no, I think you certainly you should think about, you know, the suggestion. Take a look at the feasibility and the cost. You know, I don't mention this without being insensitive to cost. I know it's going to cost more money, but on the big picture, if you can get the project approved and move forward, there's some benefits there. And the foot, I picked the foot partly because it's a nice round number. It's easy to achieve, and partly because having seen, you know, the most recent Horsley analysis, which is more conservative, without a question, it's about splitting the difference. So I'm not saying that they're going to appeal, or who knows whether this ever gets appealed, who knows. But in terms of engineering and trying to show good faith, I think the foot, in my view anyway, Bert, is just a nice even number. It shows good faith,
Mhm.
and you walk away from it with a clear conscience. But you know, but you can talk about it with Bob, and I'll put it back to Daryl at this point. Daryl, I don't know.
So I would like to mention a few things about that are important for the Sherborn Board of Health. One, Title V is a minimum for the state, minimum requirements. And as such, the Title V requirements are applying to septic systems in areas where people are being supplied water from a distant location. And that is not the case in Sherborn. So there are reasons why we want to be a bit more conservative about when we're going into new territory, especially with this mounding analysis for this system. There are also some interesting things about the site, such as quite a wide range in perk rates. So I don't know whether either you, Mark, or Bert have any opinions about, let's say, since the system is being put where the perk rates were meeting the Title V standard of being less than 60 minutes per inch. However, surrounding the field is 60 minutes per inch. Does that, I'm going to use this term really loosely, and it's not exactly what it is, but is that almost acting potentially like a slurry wall around where the system will be? And then should we be taking that into consideration and how that might, about the importance of this mounding analysis, just to understand what could be going on in some of the more conservative assumptions, like going to a foot or picking the midpoint between what Mark and what Scott Horsley came up with. So those are some of the things that we need to look at and why we're even going down this path, because information came to us that raised the concerns and pointed out some issues, potential issues.
Yeah, the issues were brought before you, so I think it's certainly well within your purview to consider them as a board. As a board,
to consider
it's
them.
it's your duty, right? And you need to make the decisions you need to make. As I said before, you act independently of the ZBA. But in terms of as your agent, I'm just agent at this point in time anyway, giving you the recommendation that I think if they were to do that extra foot, that would be very positive. And am I concerned about the lesser perk rates, the slower soils around? Honestly, the variability across that site, and I've looked at all of the test pits, is just, that's New England for you, and that's Sherborn for you as well. You see that variability. Does it scare me? Do I think it's acting as a slurry wall? No, I don't think so at all. And I think that this system should function properly. Because it gets down into the water table, and the water table will move as it does, and it has its way of moving. We don't know how it moves because no one's done a hydrogeo study here. But I think it's well within the bounds of the design, and especially if they raise it a foot, is well within the bounds of a good Title V design, and should function fine.
Okay. And Bert, anything you want to weigh in on that? You don't have to. Asking.
No, I agree with what Mark just said. I mean, we have done several percolation tests as well as permeability tests on that site. It is a glacial till, and that's one of the reasons why we do perk tests too, is we try to find an area that does have a percolation rate that works. There were some areas, for whatever reason, did not perk. Sometimes that happens to be a rock at the bottom of the perk test, to be quite honest. We can't predict that sometimes, even when we're digging. And I know that I've been on sites where, I'll spend 45 minutes digging a hole only to find a rock at the bottom of it and have to start digging all over again. So, there is some variability, again, being till. We found an area where the perk tests were suitable for the system to handle this design flow. So I feel very comfortable with that. So.
Okay, so I'm hearing from you that you don't see any kind of confinement of the flow of effluent through the system and moving with the groundwater below.
No, and as you can see from the site, this site slopes downward, down gradient to the north.
Yeah.
And we've got a system that we've raised above the estimated seasonal high groundwater. It's a step trench system, so that we don't bring in an exorbitant amount of fill to put in a flat system. We're trying to work with the grades, and we're trying to work with the landscape as best we can.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have questions on this topic? Or anyone in the audience have questions on this topic? Or comments? Okay. So for the board, again, it's getting late, but so there have been a number of waiver requests. Would anyone like to offer any thoughts that you have, or still digesting? And we'll cover that at the next meeting, so there'll be, again, we have two steps. One is Title V compliance. And then there are recommendations regarding the waiver request.
Can I just ask a kind of a process status of things? And
Yeah.
this question is actually to Bob. Bob, none of us were at the meeting you just came from. And so could you update us on the continuation status of the comprehensive hearing?
The ZBA tonight seemed to be in a mood to finish. We previously have given them an extension on the process to close the hearing until February 6th. They seemed to be of a mind to close that hearing on February 5th and go into deliberations at that point. They seemed reasonably positive about the project at this point. I don't want to over-characterize it, but generally they were the body language was more positive than not. We talked about a lot of these issues that we're talking about with you tonight, right? I didn't get the sense it was their inclination to ask for the additional testing that's been bandied about. They did not ask for a increase, a raising of the system. As I said tonight, if we're talking about support and approval of a Title V system and support from you, then I can go back and add that foot. But I want a commitment from the board that that's where we are with you prior to my going back and doing that. Because, to be honest, I don't want to do that if we're just going to end up in the same old place. It, feels like we're headed maybe for a better place on this, but I want to know that before I go back and do any more redesign. I've reduced the septic density by 25% from 16 to 12. I've reduced the number of homes from 8 to 4, which we all know is going to more than 25% reduce the septic density. But I just would like to, as always, I'd like to work with you guys toward, a good resolution. The other thing I can tell you, and this is not super relevant to your work, but I am in conversations with the neighbors about the location of the homes, and to try to make it a more acceptable layout for the neighbors. It's not something obviously I'm required to do, but clearly I want to collaborate. I want to get to a yes rather than litigation. We've already done litigation twice on 40Bs in the last year, and I don't want to do a third one. I want to get to yes with you guys, but I need, it needs to go both ways. And I think the ZBA is in the mood to do that. And I'm hopeful that you all are as well. I'd be grateful. This is a good project. It's going to bring an affordable home to town. It's going to bring three, well below Sherborn market prices homes to town. It's going to get potentially new families. And it's going to be, in many ways, it's kind of it's a perfect smart growth in that these 4 homes are going to sit on, I don't know, maybe it's an acre and the driveway's another 3/4 of an acre. And the rest of the 5 acres is going to, well, in the septic, of course, sorry. But you can see when you look at the plan, there's a lot of open space left on this site. I think it's a nice way to develop 4 single-family homes. So anyway, I'm hopeful that we can get to a positive place with you guys. And like I said, I'd be grateful. And I just want to say one more thing. I know Bert sort of said it, Mark, but I want to say it directly to you because I've literally said it to 3 or 4 different people. I thought your letter was extraordinarily well written. And, for a layperson like myself and, many of us on this call, not Bert and Kevin, of course. But I mean, I could really follow. I didn't agree with everything, obviously, and we went back and forth, but I loved the way you articulated this. It was really clear, and I loved it. I wish all engineers wrote like you did. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I agree with you on that point for sure, Bob. So the ZBA is continuing to February 5th.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So for Board of Health,
me,
that would be
sorry, are you saying February 5th, 5 or 6? Isn't it the 6th?
The legal extension was to February 6th, but they have chosen to meet on, oh, excuse me, I take it back. I made a mistake. My apologies. It's February 3rd.
Oh,
The extension is to February 6th, but the ZBA decided to meet on Monday, February 3rd, in part, frankly, because I have a personal health thing going on the night they wanted to meet, so they accommodated me, and I was appreciative.
okay, so they were going to meet on the 3rd, and the hearing.
We're going to meet on the 6th originally, and our next meeting is the 5th.
We're just trying to figure out if we have to talk about the waivers tonight or if we can talk about them and still be able to submit them during the hearing. That's what we're just trying to do.
Well, that's February 3rd, Julie, and you're not meeting till February 5th.
Yes, that's why the difference between 3 and 6 isn't relevant.
My
here.
apologies, my mistake.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Daryl, if they're meeting the 3rd, the hearing closes the 6th. It seems like we should have a discussion regarding at least the most salient waivers. And then we have to authorize people to write that up in a memo. Before we get into waivers, Daryl, can I going back to, it was number 13 under Mark's memo, in terms of under condo law, the master deed and the O&M. This is new for me. I wasn't part of the Abbey Road project, as you know. I just want to understand, and I put in a call to DEP to understand that process. If it is our requirement for the Board of Health to review the master deed and those condo documents, or who else would review those to ensure that they fulfill the necessary requirements that we would have in terms of fiscal assurances and operation and maintenance. I just want to understand where that falls in both whose jurisdiction and what is the sequencing of requiring that. I have not heard back, so that's to my board members. I will hopefully get an answer to that. I imagine that is relevant, particularly in terms of the timing and whether or not we need to condition the permit on receipt of those documents.
Julie, may I make a suggestion respectfully? So it's not a Title V issue because we're not a shared system. I think the way to, and I don't object to what you're asking for. In other words, I have to, a master deed and an operation and maintenance and a reserve are all part of the way this works. It's all standard. It's been done a million times. But it's not a Title V issue. And so therefore, what I would recommend, and I think it's going to happen even if you don't say it, but I would recommend that there be a condition, and Paul will help me here. Paul Haverty, my attorney, is on tonight. I believe it's an administrative, the ZBA is allowed to have administrative review. And this, to me, a master deed and a operations and maintenance plan, and making sure they have to have a reserve fund by law. That's the law in Massachusetts. So all of these things, I think, can be a condition of the ZBA for their administrative review. Because it's not under Title V and it's not in your regulations, it's not clear to me how it's in your purview of review. I think it's ZBA, but that's just my opinion.
And Bob, if I could jump in here, it's absolutely standard in a 40B process where condominiums are proposed that certificates of occupancy are not allowed to be issued until the condominium master deed and documents have been submitted to town council for review, and to provide the assurances that all of the appropriate details are addressed in those documents. And so that would be a standard condition in a comprehensive permit decision by any board. And certainly we would have no objections to the Board of Appeals including it in a decision here.
Similar to what was done for 59 North Main, I believe.
Well, that is helpful because I wasn't here for 59 North Main either. That is helpful. And it assuming that is all accurate, it helps me in that process. And I think Mark had a few other suggestions for conditions regarding things like benchmarks. I would certainly incorporate that in terms of the permit.
Right.
And if Daryl, I don't know if you want to jump back and forth, if you wanted a sense of the board in terms of what we need in terms of Title V approval before we get into the waivers. I think for me to feel like we are upholding the letter and intent of Title V, adding that additional foot to the system to ensure a consistent 4 foot of separation would put this over the threshold for me. In my view, it would make it permittable, but I would like to hear how everyone else feels.
No, I agree. I mean, taking a look at what I've heard tonight and yeah, Mark's analysis and report, that I feel that I would feel a lot better. I would feel comfortable, put it that way, with additional space. The foot added to that.
I just had a question, Julie, the request for the additional foot, does that include the membrane as well, or is that without the membrane?
No, the additional foot is raising the system an additional foot to ensure the membrane, I think, is a separate, certainly out there, whether or not we would require that. My inclination, it would be to follow the advice of our agent on this, because I haven't heard or seen anything that says it's a bad idea.
Okay, so the advice would be raise it a foot, but also include the membrane. Mark, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, no, I would just say on the membrane, as long as it rises up high enough to be the top of the trench, then you're fine.
Okay,
The membrane doesn't need to go all the way up to the top of the wall. But you know, as long as it's consistent with the top of trench, then I'd be okay with that.
all right, thank you.
And Steve, did you want to comment on any of your current thoughts on
Yeah,
this issue?
and again, I just listening tonight, reading the documentation that we've had on this and the other meetings we've had, I think it sounds like we're getting to a pretty good compromise on this, or at least I'm comfortable with it. Yeah, I think we're in the right direction or close to that sweet spot now.
Okay, so that leaves me. And I'm glad that we're accounting for the mounding, because if not for that information having come forth, you know, we might not have considered it, and I think that would have been an oversight for something this size and for the conditions. And having researched mounding done in other mounding analysis requirements in other states, there are some that set a much lower threshold at around 1,000 gallons per day. And that's for when systems are mounded systems, interestingly enough. So I think technically we're in a good place on this, and that there is reason for doing it. And certainly with the analyses have shown, I think with Mark's analysis, I'd say aiming more towards what is most likely present, and then with Scott Horsley's building in a few more conservative factors for the evaluation, the 1 foot seems reasonable as something that's you know, has that extra cushion of protection above what is most likely the conditions there. And raising it up also helps provide a bit more material, even though I don't think that Title V sand is the best for treating and filtering complex effluent. It is not going to be as good as naturally deposited soils, but having that extra amount of material fill put in, I think, is an advantage for helping to protect the groundwater.
Yep.
So it's looking like perhaps the best option for the system. And protection, and frankly, protection for the residents of this project. So Julie, would you like to walk us through the other waiver requests?
Well, I was just
You've got that handy?
I was trying to pull up the waiver request to go through them. I was going to go through the things that were flagged to me. I mean, as a matter of what have we consistently done, we have recommended that all of our local regulations be upheld. That has been the consistent practice. If I were to kind of go through and call out specific things, I know one of the and Daryl, I'm going to rely on you to give a little background on this. One of the waiver requests were to our Section 3 EHIR that specifically calls out 40B projects. And I would like to suggest to the ZBA that waiver should be granted. In my assessment and read of that, I do not think that is an appropriate call out. I think we should be calling out projects based on their size and density, not based on whether or not they're developed under Chapter A or Chapter 40B, Chapter 40A or Chapter 40B. And so I would suggest that we in fact grant that waiver. I know that there's a more complex history behind that, if you want to go into it, Daryl, but that's my inclination.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's actually not all that complex. In our last significant updating of the Board of Health regulations for septic systems and for wells, we had a lot of topics that we were looking at. We were working with a prior iteration of town council, and frankly, it wasn't until we were at the very end of the process and in the final public hearings on the proposed language that the addition that had been made, I believe, by town council with that qualifier of the EHIR being applicable to any 40B project came to our attention. We discussed it at the public hearing and felt that it, just as you said, there should be other criteria that would pull it in. It shouldn't be merely by virtue of being a 40B, but for us to have struck it from the regulations at that point would have meant canceling the public hearing that we were in the middle of, making lots of updates and going back to the beginning in terms of advertising the public hearing. So it would have delayed things significantly. And the board at that time, which was a different composition than the board currently, just felt that we would not be applying it merely based on 40B status of a project. And I was fully behind that.
So I think since this would be in a recommendation, we should kind of see if we have get a sense of the board, if we have a majority of the board that would support the ZBA granting that waiver. I would be in support.
I would be in support.
I would agree.
Oops. Yeah. That sounds fine.
Okay, well, that's done.
All right.
Let's see. I'm still having, it seems like I can't find the thing. I'm looking for the waiver list now and I'm trying to find it off the website. I think in terms of, so typically we have jurisdiction over the wells. In this case, it is the ZBA that does. And so these are going to be private wells. Bob and my looking through, both of the wells will be owned by the condo association, which makes sense. That's an ownership structure I fully agree with. One of the things that strikes me in looking at the proximity of the wells to each other is that they're pretty close. I don't have the measurements, but it seems like when we get to the pump test that it would be advantageous for them to be pumped simultaneously to make sure that they're not influencing one another.
Yeah, I think that's actually, we did that at Abbey Road, Julie. So if we did that at Abbey Road, I'm comfortable doing it on this project. The two wells do meet your separation requirement in your regulations, just FYI.
They're 75 feet.
I believe they're more than 75 feet apart. Yeah. I'm not looking at the plan, but it was my memory that we intentionally. Honestly, guys, when I design these projects, every regulation of yours I can be compliant with. I am, because it's easier not to fight about it, right? It's, and it's more conservative, and that's what I do. So it's only when I'm really forced into, I mean, obviously I don't have the naturally occurring depth of groundwater here. I need that variance to build affordable housing. That's a requirement. But whenever I can meet your regulations, I do. You want me to show you where the wells are?
Well, I mean, I can see the wells. I'm not the one screen sharing. Steve, I believe Steve, your screen
Yeah,
sharing.
are they on this plan?
Yeah,
You
they're on
have
the
to
plan.
Well, you're gonna have
One
to.
one of them is in the apron between the two homes. But to be honest, if we move the homes as, you know, in working with the neighbors, if we move the location of the homes, it is highly likely we'll move the location of the wells, but we're very aware of your local, you know, I'm very aware of your local regulations and we're going to meet them. We can and we will. So they may be moved from where they are right now, but they will meet the regulations. And I'm only moving them because if we're accommodating uh, you know, a conversation with the neighbors about the building placement, then we're gonna probably need to move those wells around a little bit. They'll be in the same general area. Obviously, given the 150-foot septic circle, which you see drawn on this plan, the wells will be down below that.
Julie, I'm sorry I had to step away, but I picked up that the wells are separated a certain distance. You thought 75 feet?
They're
Okay.
more than 75 feet.
Because I measured 115 on
Yeah,
the
Okay.
plan.
yeah.
I was just mentioning our regulation is 75.
Oh,
And so
okay.
because it's not called out, I was clarifying that they are at least 75.
They are definitely at least 75, yeah.
And hopefully that, as you possibly redesign, that can be maintained. Something in
Yes,
that.
absolutely, yes.
I
And
would
actually,
like to ask,
the ZBA had indicated, Zach, the chair of the ZBA had indicated he wanted to see, rather than under your regulations, you can protect the wells and put them within 20 feet of the driveway. Zach indicated that he wanted to see them the full 20 feet, and we're going to do our best, and I believe we'll be able to accommodate that, even though we can do them closer to the driveway by your regulations, but, you know.
okay,
we want to be cooperative.
that's good to hear, because that's exactly what I was going to say, that when when the Board of Health made that adjustment to the regulation, it was in response to people being squeezed when they were usually doing some modifications to their property, to pre-existing wells, septics, or the need to enlarge a septic or relocate a septic, change other things on the property. They would sometimes encounter an issue or needing to drill a new well and a good place to put it, that the board had come up with that idea of a protection of the wellhead. And it's really for the benefit of the well owner, less risk to it of being damaged, of a plow hitting it and changing the seal around the casing or anything else, and contaminants migrating down, whatever. But really hadn't anticipated it for new construction. And it is something, it's a variance that we can grant an accommodation to make, but it wasn't envisioned to be used when there's a lot more, at the point where there's a lot more flexibility and choice for locations of things. So that would be better in the long run, because people don't always understand what might happen with the well. And again, it would be up to the homeowner to have to take care of, but we don't want people drinking water that had inadvertently become contaminated without them knowing it for some period of time. So the more we can stay away from that risk, the better.
And it looks like I'm gonna connect onto that train of thought, that I'm looking at the January 2025 waiver list, which I would assume is the most current one. Request waiver of all requirements for our domestic water supply, with the exception of the abandonment and prohibition for other things like heat pumps. And so I would also suggest to the ZBA that our water quality regulations be upheld in terms of the testing and standards. Does anybody have a difference of thought on that one? To the rest of the board, does anybody disagree that we would recommend not waiving our water quality regulations?
No, I agree. I mean, it's just because it's a 40B, people should still have the same quality water as the rest of us.
I'm in agreement with that as well.
And I do too. I had a whole longer statement, but I was on mute, so.
Oh,
But the short answer is yes, I agree with that.
I think short answers are good at 10 p.m. Okay, I'm just going through the rest of these. We've discussed the EHIR standards. I think that's the totality. Bob, I'm going to ask you, did we miss any big ones? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so, Julie. I mean, the big ones are the, obviously the two septic.
Yep, those are the big ones. Yep. I guess as maybe we need to call that out, Daryl. Again, the standard that we have consistently done is that we recommend that be upheld.
Sorry, which one are you?
I'm sorry, our particularly our regulations in terms of 5 feet of separation versus the Title V required 4 feet.
Yes, I mean, we have that regulation for a reason because we do think it's important, again, in a town where the septic, the SASs sit above the drinking water source. But that is not possible on this site, as is.
Diana and Steve, do you disagree with a recommendation that part of our regulations being upheld, that the waiver not be granted?
I don't disagree with that. No, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm confused, Julie, just in the language in what you actually just said. Are you intending to oppose the project or are you intending to allow the project?
As a, well, as a matter of principle, we believe that all of our local regulations should be applied to for all projects. But in terms of the Title V permit, again, if the system is raised, it sounds like for a majority of the board that we do not see any other barriers to being able to permit this as a Title V permit.
Well, but I guess, are you going to recommend to the ZBA that they deny the project because it's not 5 feet to groundwater? That's my question.
Yeah.
I would say
Because that
I
was what
haven't
going.
seen the courts going in our favor on that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see
I don't think there's an appreciation of what we face as a town that has this kind of reliance on local groundwater. So do I think it's the best path? No. Do I think it's the realistic path? Probably.
Smart. I agree with that. I agree with that, Daryl. It's maybe not the ideal situation, but I think it's the realistic situation. I suspect we can put that ambiguity into words. Okay, I think that Daryl, I don't see any additional waivers for us to discuss that have been requested. I think then that would leave us to authorize to a minority of the board to write that up as a memo to the ZBA prior to, I guess ideally prior to the 3rd of February, but certainly before the 6th.
think having it written up maybe before the 3rd, but then voting on it at our meeting on the 5th to finalize it would probably be a good idea.
Okay, that makes sense. I think that makes sense. So then realistically, it needs to be in by whatever that Monday is. The
Monday-
3rd.
Monday is the 3rd.
The 3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the 3rd. So that doesn't leave that much time, now does it? Okay.
No. And how would that work? Something would be submitted to the ZBA, or we're waiting until the 5th and to actually vote on the final document, but yet they've met the 3rd?
Well, there's when they're meeting, and it sounds like when they're closing the hearing is the 6th. So if we had something ready on the 5th or early the morning of the 6th, we could submit that. Am I misunderstanding the timing, Bob or Paul?
I'm sorry, say it again, Daryl. I missed the question. Apologize.
So if we finalize the comments after we have a chance to review them and vote as a board, that would mean the earliest we could get it would be either the evening of the 5th or the morning of the 6th.
Yeah, I
To
don't,
the ZBA. So they are,
Paul might answer the
Right.
question. I'm not going to because I don't really know.
okay,
So our hope is going to be that the board closes the public hearing on the 3rd, which
Oh.
would mean that no more input could be taken. There's a possibility that they try to get another meeting in by the 6th. And then there's always the possibility that when we get there on the 3rd, there are still issues that need to be reviewed and discussed, and we may grant another extension. So I think you should operate under the presumption that it will close by the 3rd, but leaving, the potential that there may be additional extensions.
okay. So I thought I had read that there was an extension to the 6th.
So the extension
was that for
that
a
we
different
granted
project?
went to February 6th, but the board scheduled its meeting for February 3rd. So again, theoretically, they could try to hold another meeting between February 3rd and February 6th, but I find that to be unlikely. And if they don't, I mean, if they're unable to schedule another meeting on the 3rd prior to the 6th, then and no extension is granted, they would have to close on the 3rd. So that's why I'm saying you should presume, just for the sake of being careful, that it's going to close on the 3rd, and that anything that you're going to submit to them should get to them by the 3rd, not by the 6th, because if we get to the 3rd and close, that's going to be the end of the process. And then that puts them into a 40-day period in which they would deliberate and have time to issue their decision, but they wouldn't be able to take any new evidence.
Okay, so they have to close in an open session is the issue. So
Correct.
that written extension to the 6th is meaningless without a meeting on the 6th to accompany it.
Correct,
Okay.
right.
I
Yeah,
thought the
so at
extension
the end of
to
the
the
meeting on the
6th was-
3rd, they're either going to close the public hearing, or, if there are still outstanding issues, we'll grant them an extension and it'll go beyond that. But the chances of there being a meeting between the 3rd and the 6th are very unlikely. So just in the off chance that we actually get everything resolved by the 3rd, I think you would want to have whatever information that you want to get into the public record to the board prior to the 3rd.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so back to our subcommittee on who's going to prepare this and whether the board is authorizing this subgroup to finalize, or we try to have another meeting to just be able to go over it?
Or both, so that the subcommittee works on it, and then we have maybe
Yeah.
a shorter meeting to what formally,
Merely review it, distribute it, review it, gather, talk, vote.
yes.
Okay, so if people are willing, maybe we could keep that to a very short period of time. And, oh, since it's a public meeting, if they're meeting on Monday evening, we really can't hold a public meeting, open meeting over the weekend, frowned upon. Emergency meeting, but I don't think this will qualify as that kind of emergency. So that means having it by the prior week.
So the
Okay.
31st. If we're going to have a meeting to review and vote, then it seems like the 31st.
And we don't want to do it like Friday night. I think that's also frowned upon. I don't know if it's absolutely a no-no, but
Well, there's trade-offs because
I
would
work all the time, so for me, I can sometimes move things around to be available during the day, or we could do it early in the morning before work, or I don't know, lunchtime, or would it have to be Thursday night? I don't know how to do this. And I might have business travel that week. All right, maybe we need to
Nice.
look at schedules and get back together on how we would do that. So let's just work on the subcommittee first, and the how we're going to meet. And
Daryl, you have to
deliberate on.
post your meetings, don't you, if you have a meeting? So-
Yes, yes,
So is there a minimum time in advance?
yes.
Hours.
48 hours in advance.
Oh, it's only,
And frankly, a little bit more depending, because it has to be aligned with town clerk office hours and the work
Right,
week,
right.
and whether there are holidays in between. And
so you've got time to post then. If you decide on a date, you can,
yes,
yeah, okay,
yes, we just have to find a time when we could all meet that's
right.
practical.
So theoretically, this would be just, this memo would simply be writing up what we've discussed tonight. It's for the full board
Yes.
to review it, to vote on it, to have approval, so that we can then send it off to the ZBA. In theory, this should be a 30-minute meeting or less. And
Yes,
so
I'm
I'm
hoping.
going to, I'm going to put out there, if we can have a quorum, because it will get sent to everyone, but if we could have a quorum on Friday, the 31st, sometime in the morning, if we can find a 30-minute period where we're all available, that would be nice.
I may
I'll
not
start with
be able
10
to.
o'clock. Who can do 10 o'clock?
I can, I'm good.
I cannot. I have a MD appointment Friday morning.
All of Friday mornings out.
Well, not all Friday morning, but since I'm going to the VA, that takes me a while.
Is there a time on Friday that would work for you, Diana?
Yes, I'm pulling up my calendar.
We would just like to make sure we have more than 3, the minimum, in the event somebody gets sick.
Yeah, I'm available like anytime after noon.
And that
1
can
o'clock.
work for me as long as I can keep my travel from ending up on that day.
Would 1 PM be
Yes, I could do 1 o'clock.
okay,
I can do one.
okay.
All right,
Right now that's feasible?
yes.
Okay, let's plan on that. Oh, it's in January. All right,
And I'll set up a calendar for that. All right.
okay. And who's going to write it?
Uh,
We're gonna plan on it.
I'd be fine helping.
If no one else wants to do it, I will do it, but I'm certainly happy to let someone else assist.
Nicely put. Let somebody else.
I'm sorry, to let someone
too.
invite someone else.
All right. Well, if someone else gets a hankering, you can let Julie and I know, and we can swap out.
I think, do we have to have a vote then to authorize that, Daryl?
Yes.
I think we
Oh,
need
true. I
to.
guess it makes it a little hard to swap out
Yeah.
another meeting. All right. So do we have a motion to approve Julie and Daryl to prepare a
Okay.
statement for the ZBA regarding our decisions about this, the Brush Hill Homes project?
The waivers, recommendation on the waivers.
Waiver, Title V and waivers.
So move to authorize the two of you to draft comments about the waivers in Title V.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. So, are there any other comments from either, actually just say really from any members of the public who've been listening in on this? Otherwise, we'll wrap up the other items on our agenda for this evening.
Can I just speak for 1 second, Daryl?
If it's brief, yes. And, or how about if it doesn't repeat something that we've already gone over? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I wanted to kind of summarize where we are, that you have agreed in principle to approve, to give ZBA the green light, and you have agreed in principle to the Title V, obviously subject to us going back and drawing the system a foot higher for Mark to review it and make sure he's comfortable. And we are, I'm not sure whether likely or maybe going to slide those houses down plan, and but it won't change anything relative to septic in a way that I can think of could impact compliance. We will keep the wells, 100 feet apart, and respect and away from the common driveway and away from the property lines. And does that feel to you all like that's where we are? Because obviously I'm going to go off and do some work, and I just wanted to kind of re-articulate at the end of a long meeting. I'm very appreciative of everything, but I just wanted to confirm that. Great, thank you, appreciate it. And Mark, I assume you're not going to be on vacation the next 2 weeks.
You talking to me? No.
Yes.
No, I'll be around.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
So, see how quickly we can wrap up. All right. Let's do a couple easy things for a change of pace. The food permits for St. Teresa Parish and Unitarian Universalist Church.
Daryl?
Yes?
Yeah, Daryl, I spoke to
do-
Tom and I sent emails out to indicate the water testing for both applications for these food permits or have submitted their water test and both will need to post sodium notices based on the sodium. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to go over the food permits because there were some interesting differences between the two, but I'll shorten that in the interest of time and say that so the Unitarian Church is getting this right, the Unitarian Church is a public water supply. So their testing regime is different, right? It's certainly much more frequent than usually for private wells. So if anyone was curious as to why the lab reports look different, that accounts for it. In any case, past Tom's review, the application is in order. No fee was required. Tom recommends approval of both permits conditional to compliance with all applicable regulations and sodium posting. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Let's see. Disposal works installer permits, we have 2. And Mark, do you have any comments on these?
Nope, both have
installers?
worked in town over the past 2 years and I would recommend approval of both installers' request.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the disposal works installer permits for, okay, Ludimar, Ferreira,
That
Nico
is
of
correct.
Marlboro,
Yep.
if I'm even anywhere close on that, and then Cesar Alves of CN Construction Group.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye. We've had a rabies exemption request for Chico. And oops, I forgot to bring that up. Okay. So as we see here, the dog in question has health conditions that has compelled the veterinarian to recommend that the animal not be vaccinated. And there are these conditions that the Board of Health has required that anyone requesting that, if we grant the exemption, that they agree to the conditions listed here. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read this before, but I'll give you a moment if you haven't.
in looking at Chico's, not try to say his name right, current state of health, I get the impression that he is not going to be running through the forest and likely encountering lots of wild animals. And so it seems like his risk is pretty low. And I also get the impression that he's probably not unattended very much on his own.
Yeah, and that's part of this part of what they're signing. Exempted animals shall now be allowed outdoors without being on a leash and muzzled, and shall be under the direct physical control of adult owner at all times. And we're trying to, yes, inspire people to manage the pet appropriately, reduce risk.
We don't have a local animal inspector, do we?
We do.
Oh, we do.
Kim Morrow is our animal inspector.
Okay.
But we do require this information to come from a veterinarian. And I don't believe that Kim is a veterinarian. Okay, so I don't think the person is here at the moment, but do we have any questions that we'd want to relate to them, or are we ready to take a vote on this?
I don't have any questions.
I don't either. This is an older dog with medical conditions. This dog, yeah, as Julie mentioned, isn't going to be running after the coyotes and the deer. Yeah.
Who's responsible for the 1-year follow-up? Is that us or?
No, that's on them.
That's on them. Okay.
But that's triggered in the licensing permit, I think, because you are required to provide it, the rabies vaccination, and otherwise you have to seek an exemption. So that is the follow through on the annual is really done by the town licensure process.
Thanks.
Okay, so do we have a motion to
Exempt Chico from the rabies vaccine requirement?
Yes, excellent.
So moved.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Drax, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
I wish Chico the best. Poor guy.
A minute, no new minutes. Review and public health nurse, just a reminder that the public health nurse is going to be starting in Dover on, now I've forgotten it, I'm pretty sure it's the 10th, and maybe in Sherborn on the 11th was the current plan, but that may be subject to change between now and then. And then pretty much that nurse is going to be heading to shared services training for a couple of weeks. And then we'll be working out arrangements of what they're working on in Sherborn. They're going to spend most of their time in Dover because Dover is paying for it out of their Board of Health budget. And we are getting access to the public health nurse through the remaining 15 hours out of the 40 hours being covered by shared services. Also had a discussion with the Visiting Nurses Association this morning, and they've had one of their nurses leave. So in a way, they may actually want to, we were going to do some overlap with the incoming public health nurse and with the visiting nurses. That may be reduced just because it may not be practical for them to rehire for the position, because it turns out there's a whole trend driven by shared services. I didn't realize it was so much driven by that visiting nurses services are not being used as much as they were. And that seems maybe to be a policy under the shared services. So they're not sure that they want to rehire someone, so we may be looking at some reduced services from them, and maybe termination of the contract even before the 90-day mandatory, notice. So, but I just learned of this afternoon, so more to come on that, whether that's an issue or not for us. I gather that we can get shared services to cover for some of the roles that we need a certified public health nurse to do, so MAVEN in particular. So I need to contact them tomorrow to find out about that. Okay. Anything else?
Next
Well, our
meeting.
next agenda will be short for hopefully just the review of this one thing. I'll check with the minutes clerk on minutes. And
On February 5th, Daryl, that agenda.
yes, yeah, that one. Do you have something that you know of, Mark?
Well, we have 11 Ames continuation of the building plan review and the septic plan approval. 15 Everett Street, continuation of the proposed building application review for both of them. They're
Okay.
proposed. And today I attended a accessory development unit webinar held by the Mass Environmental Health Association, and I can provide updates on that if you'd like that as an agenda item.
Oh, that would be nice.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. And I even have slides they provided if you'd like those as well.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Oh, and Daryl, one other housekeeping thing. We need to vote to authorize a member to sign the outside work disclosure form, given that we don't have an acting administrator at the time. The rough background is the personnel board recently enacted an outside work policy where it has to be disclosed. And so on that form, it's a one-page form. On that form, you have to have a supervisor's signature. And given that we don't have an administrator, which is the supervisor, we would just need to authorize one member to empower one member to sign that in lieu of the administrator. It's more about a housekeeping thing to make sure we have support of the board for that.
And a temporary role, most likely.
Very temporary, hopefully.
Okay, so we could talk about that next time, and everyone can come up with their campaign slogans to get that honored position. All right. And I believe there might be, you mentioned that we have quite a few variance hearings. Can't remember how many.
I don't have those.
Not just two. Excuse me?
I don't have that list with me, but
yeah,
we can share that with you.
But we do have variance hearings coming up. Okay. Have we missed anything?
I think we have everything. Yeah.
All right. We are missing a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, have a good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Mark.
See you
Thanks.
soon.
Marks, both Marks, thank you.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.